Listen, it's no secret that I'm not exactly a health nut, but I do try to remain cognizant of what my body and mind tell me. To that end, I've adopted a pretty standard 1 meal a day routine. I do cardio each and every day, and I lift 5 days a week. But I knew there was something more I could be doing the second Athletic Greens entered my life, the easy-to-take health supplement that gives your body the fuel it needs. Indeed, you can discover more right this very second, if you'd like, at athleticgreens.com/sacred. So what is Athletic Greens? Well, its so-called AG1 formula is a powder that you mix into water. It's made of 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens, and it supports gut health and your nervous and immune systems, as well as bringing to bear positive effects on aging, recovery, focus, energy, and more. And perhaps most surprisingly of all, it actually tastes good. At less than $3 a day, Athletic Greens is super affordable, and the people who buy it believe in it. It totes 7,000 5-star reviews online. But perhaps its biggest selling point is how accessible it is. Not only is it easy to take and down, but it's lifestyle friendly too. If you're keto or vegan or even paleo, you can take Athletic Greens with no issues at all, and it's full of precisely 0 artificial ingredients, including less than a single gram of sugar per serving. I noticed a difference in my energy levels on the days I drank Athletic Greens, and the contrast became starker the more I took it. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs of AG1 with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/sacred. That's athleticgreens.com/SACRED. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/sacred to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 197. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined today by Chris Raygun. Chris, before we even hear from you today, before you even say one more word, we're doing something very unusual. We're going straight to Joe, who wrote into us on Patreon. He says, Colin, what in the hell is going on? For the past few episodes of Sacred Symbols, I've had to listen to you simping over Chris every time you start an episode, how suave he looks, his wonderful attire, how clean his glasses are. Letting Chris know how beautiful he looks isn't the problem. He's enough to make the straightest of men start questioning their sexuality. I get it, Colin. The problem lies in the fact that Dustin has to wait there hoping, nay, praying that he'll throw him some sort of compliment on how good looking his round-headed beauty looks, only to be met with, oh, and Dustin is here. Unacceptable. Give my boy Dustin some love. You're his father, for Christ's sakes. Much love to all, especially Dustin on this sorrowful day. Thank you, Joe, for writing in. A little confusing because you're telling me like I'm attracted to him, but then I'm also his father. I mean, weird shit happens out there. But so, Chris, I before we even, I didn't want you to say anything else. I just wanted to introduce you today simply as Chris Raygun. How are you today?
I'm well. I like how he brought up my good attire. I'm wearing a shirt right now that says "Kill Me."
Yeah.
In the Seinfeld font. It's my merch, so I guess this is good attire according to the audience, which is good. Compliment.
Yeah, that's a great shirt. I have that. I have a "Kill Me" sticker on my fridge in the garage. You know how people have like in the suburbs have like a second fridge usually in the garage. Yeah. I have one. So
I have one.
Yeah. And so when people walk by on the sidewalk or by my house, they see that sticker. It just says "Kill Me" on it. I'm sure they think it's wonderful. Dustin Furman, how are you today, my beautiful, lovely? I mean, apparently I need to really gas you up here. Let's juice Dustin up. I guess he really needs that juice. Dustin Furman, executive producer, how are you?
I'm very good. Drinking an Americano today. Holly stopped by the coffee shop, which is great. And about Joe's write-in here, I mean, it's appreciated. Obviously, everyone likes a compliment here and there, but you know, deep down, I know Colin loves me. I don't need him to gas me up publicly. That's all good and fine. And Colin and I talk regularly throughout the week, where Colin and Chris, not that you guys don't have a relationship of any sort, but Colin and I are working very directly on a lot of this content. So it's, you know, maybe, you know, the what is it? The distance makes the heart grow fonder in that moment for Chris.
Right.
I got to say last week, little egregious though. Maybe because it was a whole conversation with Chris a subtle like, oh, and this is Dustin, and then back to the conversation with Chris.
Right, right.
That maybe had me a little bit in my feelings, but I'd moved on.
That's fair enough.
But that's okay.
I mean,
it's all good and fine.
There's a few things. Oh, I'm sorry, Chris. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was gonna say that's an accurate, because like Colin and I don't really speak until we record, because I'm just like, I'm an isolated person naturally, and Colin's also kind of the same. So we sort of like converge once a week to do the show, because I'm just working on other shit or just like distracted, my ADHD ass, like so this is really the first time. These are really, especially lately, the only times that Colin and I speak.
Yeah, definitely. I think I talked to you offline about your 1099, which I had to track down. I finally, like, God almighty, I don't know what was going on with that situation, but that was not your fault. It was totally our fault. But
oh no.
But generally speaking, I have like some business things to tell Chris or whatever, and then I otherwise leave him alone. See, I get the vibe from Chris that, like he said, he's like me. He doesn't want to hear from me. Now, Dustin's different, but I will say this, and this is what I was going to say before I interrupted Chris was here first.
Yeah.
So we have to show him a little bit of deference. He was the first person that actually, Dagan was really first, but Chris was here in this show first, as far as getting the shows off, and then Dustin, you came in later, and then we brought you even later than that, because you came in as our editor and all of this. So stand down.
Colin, would you say that, I feel like I remember this from years ago now, but I remember you saying something that the way that I communicated with you early on was pivotal in my hiring, because specifically I left you alone.
Yes. No, it's exactly right. There are people. I'm talking to a person soon on Sacred Symbols Plus. Nice person, but they do I'm sending you a DM and then I'm also sending you an email thing. And I finally was like, don't do that. Like that. In my mind, it's like, do that one more time. I'm just not going to talk to you at all. And people that understand that about me, and some people do, I appreciate. We had a situation recently with one of our vendors that we're working with where they wanted to like talk to me instead of Dustin, and I had to email them and be like, no one talks to me. Like, I'm sorry. Dustin makes all the decisions, and to Dustin's credit, and Dustin knows this, I've said this to him explicitly. Dustin's unfireable. If anyone in this world has job security, it's Dustin Furman who has job security, because I don't even know what I'm supposed to do to run this business anymore. Like, I have no idea what's going on half the time. So Dustin Furman, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right. This is Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. We appreciate you. This is episode 197. Like we said, we're getting close.
Getting close.
198 and 199. Then episode 200 here in Richmond, Virginia. Top 25 PlayStation 4 games. Come join us. tinyurl.com/sacred200 to meet hundreds of your fellow fans, and we'll be there. Unfortunately, VIP tickets have been long sold out, but general admission tickets are there for you for the taking. We appreciate you. Snark Tank, Chris's podcast is opening up. I'm very excited about this. I'm specifically excited. I was starting to marinate on this with Micah now that we're a few weeks out. I'm like, I think the night before, and I think I said this to you, Dustin, I think the night before the show, I'll just have everyone over the house. It's not going to be probably warm enough to swim and stuff yet, which is unfortunate, but we can have like a little barbecue and hang out, and, we can kind of like mingle and be social. And then the next day is the show. So I'm really excited about that. Come hang out with us on April 30th here in Richmond, Virginia. tinyurl.com/sacred200. The list has been determined. I don't know it. Dustin doesn't know it. Chris doesn't know it. But the list has been determined. We've all voted. The fans have voted. If The Last of Us Part 2 isn't number one on that list, I'm going to be so fucking mad. I'm just letting you know. When it pops up at like number 12 or something, I'm going to walk off the stage.
Chris and I can handle the show at that point.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
We'll make it work.
We'll make it work.
If you do support us over on Patreon, we appreciate it. Patreon.com/laststandmedia is more than 12,500 of you over there right now. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Get early ad-free access to the show, the ability to submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas, which I pepper throughout the show. And shout out, by the way, to this new pepper. I'm a big black pepper fan, and I got this
you
black
grind it yourself?
pepper. Sometimes,
okay.
But I got this black pepper. Sometimes not, because I use so much of it too. I have like a little spoon in a pepper like jar, and I just like do a little of this. But I went to this place and got pepper infused with bell peppers. So it's like ground, dark. It's just, I'll tell you what, it's something special. What was I talking about? Patreon.com/laststandmedia. Discord, all the other things as well. Sacred Symbols Plus. Now, Sacred Symbols Plus goes live twice a week on Patreon. We've done recent ones about Horizon and Elden Ring. We're going to do one about Ghostwire, which we're going to talk about in a little while. GT7's coming up. I invited friend of the show, Gio Corsi, to the show to celebrate Vita, which we're going to do, and that will go live soon. He's, of course, a big shot over at Ilphonic now, who we talked about recently on the show, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But one I did recently was with Hasan Karaman. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Another one I did recently that has already gone live is with Tom from Moore's Law is Dead. And I'm pleased to announce James Fraley wrote in and said, hey guys, Colin, great job adding Tom from Moore's Law as a contributor to the Last Stand team. Always enjoy the discussions between the both of you. He definitely has the knowledge and know-how to be a part of this quadruple A production. Everyone, keep up the great work. It definitely is leaps and bounds above your peers. Thank you, James, for writing in. So yeah, welcome Tom from Moore's Law is Dead as our second contributor. Of course, Hogue is our legal contributor now. I don't like, and we're going to talk about this later, about the way people are paid and abused and used in the media. I don't like doing that. So with both Hogue and with Tom, I'm the one who approached them and said, like, can I start paying you to be on the show? Because it feels so awkward to say, like, oh, come on the show and tell us everything you know.
Yeah.
And then I'll just make money on it. So welcome. Appreciate that. Glad to have you on board. So thank you all out there for supporting us on Patreon. Now, boys, there's a few things to get into. Actually, quite a few things to get into, including a correction for me at the top. James Mullins wrote in and said, Dear CDC, greetings and salutations. I let it slide for a week, but I can stay silent no longer. I joined Patreon after being a scallywag to correct an injustice. I thought someone else would mention it, but it seems I must be the change I want to see. On episode 195, when you fellows lament the lack of quality asymmetrical multiplayer by way of a new Ghostbusters game, Colin referred to the Naughty Bear developer behavior as defunct. They are very much not, and ironically are behind one of the more successful asymmetrical games going, Dead by Daylight, which has purported 50 million total players with 1.5 million daily as of October of last year. And dutiful PlayStation Plus subscribers should have this game in their libraries from a few years back. Do you like the idea of playing as a ghost? How about Michael Myers, Leatherface, or Freddy Krueger? I don't like the idea of playing as any of those things. Although in Ghostwire Tokyo, I'm playing as a ghost, and I'm enjoying that very much. So maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. You're right. I looked this up. I don't know why I thought behavior was dead. I think it's because they literally haven't made anything since Dead by Daylight of any consequence. But they're still surviving off of that game. I forgot. Do you remember they used to be called Artificial Mind and Movement? Do you guys remember that by chance?
No.
That's when I think it was during that era that they made Naughty Bear, actually, which is a dope ass game. Love to see that come back. Okay.
I miss that premise. Like those like weird premise games that like I feel like you could only get around that time. That's like exactly the double A environment that I'm always talking about. It's just like I love that time when you just had games like Naughty Bear and just like Fracture, like what Dark Void, whatever the hell. What are these?
Definitely, you're absolutely right. It's like the first Naughty Bear ran so badly on PS3 that I would even call it like A.5 or something. Like it wasn't even double A. Yeah.
8.5.
But
A point double case A. Right. Or lowercase a.
Exactly. Right. AB. But I'd love to see that series come back. I agree with you. There's a lot of interesting ideas back then. They don't percolate like that anymore, unfortunately. No. Michael Hawkins wrote in and said, Colin, how on God's green earth do you not take shelter or at least watch the weather during a tornado warning? I live in Alabama, and every time we have severe storms, the weatherman is on with his sleeves rolled up, calling out rotations. You can bet your ass if we are under a tornado warning, we are in the basement bathroom with our bicycle helmets on. Now that you live in the South, you might have to start taking it more seriously. Otherwise, I love the show and hope all as well. Several people wrote in about this. Someone even wrote in and was like, here's a picture of what happened the last time I had a tornado warning. And it was like just destroyed, like their neighborhood or whatever. And I'm like, I'm sorry to hear that. And by the way, a tornado really did touch down in my town when we were doing that. So I heard. So was it a little flippant? Yes. Do I have a death wish? Yes. Thank you for writing in. Aaron Rob wrote in and said, greetings, Colin, Chris, and Dustin. Chris, I think you'll like this one especially. It's always talked about on the show what people are doing when listening to the show, and I had to share because it is so directly connected to last week's episode. I listen to the podcast through Bluetooth in my car regularly, so I have the volume up quite a bit to cancel out any other outside noises. This past week, we expected terrible weather and were encouraged to head out of our job before it began. So imagine my surprise when during a torrential downpour of rain, I hear the Gamer Battalion alarm on Colin's phone. The moment that alarm sounded, I startled so badly I nearly went off the road, while also believing that I was going to be caught in a tornado to be whisked away like Dorothy, since my gut reaction was to believe the sound was coming from my phone. After all I could think and laugh about was the idea of the last words I could have heard on Earth were Gamer Battalion and EL Fudge. Thank you, Rob, for writing in. Stay safe out there.
I love it.
Yeah.
I just love the thought of this. It's just the world, the universe in general is so chaotic that the thought of just that coincidence happening, possibly more than one time, is just like staggeringly amusing to me.
Here's what we got to consider too. We've talked about, people have talked about almost dying listening to Sacred Symbols. If someone did die listening to the show, how would we know?
Well, we wouldn't.
They wouldn't be able to tell us unless a family member was
fan,
like, they reached
unless
out.
a fan showed up to the scene and then heard it playing. It's like, oh wow, that's Sacred Symbols. They must have died listening to this.
I have a darker solution, which is that it could be on the body cam of the cops as they arrive at the scene.
Oh.
They just hear you screaming about EL Fudge.
Yeah.
What about somebody who's brought into the world and the first thing they hear is Sacred Symbols?
Yeah,
So
that'd
like
be awesome.
a husband's listening to it loudly in the hospital room, and the wife's like, can you please stop? Can you please shut that tripe off? And then the first thing the baby hears as it opens its eyes, as it's whisked into this beautiful world of ours, is Gamer Battalion.
Woo, woo. Welcome to Earth, as the saying goes. Yes, indeed. Well, I'm glad you're safe, Errant Rob. Stay safe out there. I'll certainly take my safety a little more seriously in the future. Now, I don't have I said last week, my town is like just all clay, like, like really bad for, no one talks about the types of dirt. No one cares. But clay doesn't deal with water well. So you just shouldn't build basements in clay soil. So there are no basements in my area. So I'm going away if this happens. I have nowhere to be.
Yeah.
I have to build a safe room or something. Remember that movie? You guys are a little young, but you probably remember it. Panic Room. That was a good one.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
I saw that in the theater, believe it or not. That's like during the era you see anything. You just go see anything. Get out of the house. All right. Now I don't ever want to leave the house. Strange how times change. All right. Guys, not to be too self-promotional, but we're going to be, or I'm going to be. My developer that I co-own and write for, Lily Mo, we've announced our 5th game, finally. I've been teasing it for a long time. It's called Super Perils of Baking. It's coming to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, as well as Xbox One, Xbox Series S and X, Switch, and PC on June 3rd. It is a 2D side-scroller. It is an ode to the SNES era. You're going to see a lot of references to Super Mario World and Donkey Kong and other things. You're gathering cookies instead of coins or rings, etc. And I wrote the entire game in verse. It's written like a storybook, and it's for adults and it's for children, but I wrote it hoping that maybe some parents will play it with their children as well. And I think that'll be really fun. No tricks either. No con tricks. There's no politics or deep meaning. There's lessons, and it's just about love and honor and respect and all of that. I think you guys are really going to dig it. About 2 brothers that grow up in this culinary tradition. Their family all do these amazing things in the culinary world, and they go to baking school to become bakers, and they're rivals, but they love each other. But then one of them finds this evil baking hat that brings everything he makes to life. And that's what the story's about. And so the other brother has to go and kind of bring the brother back from the other brother back from the brink, convince him not to use this hat. And so we've written something that I think is really funny and cute. And it's our biggest game. It started as a free patch for the original game. So Perils of Baking is our original game. I wasn't even part of Lily Mo during that time. And we started just kind of fucking around with it. And then it just got out of control. We ended up just remaking the entire thing. It's just totally remade from the ground up, everything about it. And it's beautiful. It's our most expensive production. And I think it's our best game, frankly. I'm really excited and interested to see what people think. Now, Dustin, you've gone hands-on with it, right?
I actually haven't yet. I cut the trailer, but
right,
Barry did all the capture.
Oh,
so.
Bummer.
I saw there's maybe some downloads that I can get access to. And
yeah, I mean, you can play the game whenever you want. Sure,
so.
Yeah, there's a package out there.
Yeah.
June 3rd, we're getting there. We were trying to get something for Herbroxia 2 on PS5 going in between. We're still working on that, so that might be coming as well. But obviously, we can't rely. No one's written about the game. Now, I'm not upset about that. We didn't send out a press release, nor do we expect people to write about random indie games. But we are really relying on you guys to check out the trailer. It's on Last Stand Media's YouTube channel. We hope that you support it when it comes out. It's going to be $10. We think that is the sweet spot for downloadable games. I think people are starting to get a little nickel and dimey. I think we can sell more copies at a lesser rate. And I really do believe this is our most accessible and interesting game yet. It's not like this hardcore arcade shooter or something.
Yeah.
And or Twin Breaker was just like this very RNG heavy, difficult, old school brick breaking game. So this is a more accessible game, but there's a lot of stuff in it. New Game Plus. There are collectibles, you know, like in Super Mario World, you would collect Yoshi coins, or in Donkey Kong, you collect Kong letters. We have that in ours. We have speed trials and all of the rest. So there's a bunch of things to get. And I've done something. I think I mentioned this before, but I'm doing something with the trophies, and that we've never done, that as far as I can tell, has never been done before. And I'm really excited about it. The PS4 and PS5 versions of Perils are indistinguishable from each other. They both run exactly the same. These games could run on a PS1. So it's not like we need the power of the PS5. So what we've done to differentiate them instead, because you're going to get them both for the same price on PlayStation, is the PS4 version has a accessible trophy list. That, well, you'll have to work for, but you'll be able to get the platinum trophy. The PS5 list is comically hard. And like you're going to have to beat, the game's going to beat the shit out of most of you if you want to try to get the PS5 platinum. And the reason we wanted to do this was to say, like, we're tired of the auto popping trophies. We're tired of the thoughtless trophies. And we wanted to do something different. So what we said was, like, let's make one list. Everyone's going to get both games. So if you want to play the gettable trophy list, play the PS4 version. If you want to challenge yourself, get the PS5 version. So for instance, the PS5 version, you get a bronze trophy. It's like beat a stage, get all the coins, get no damage, get the bake coins, beat every enemy, beat the time thing, and all of the rest. Then you get a trophy, right? Like that kind of stuff. Oh, on New Game Plus, I think, as well. So we want to see how the numbers change and like how people respond to it. And you lose nothing by doing that, because you still have the PS4 version. You can just play it on PS5. The PS5 version is kind of the unique thing. And we're excited too. We'll talk more about this. But Brian at PlayStation Trophies, who's a buddy of mine, the PS Trophies website and video series, he helped us make the list. So we're excited about that as well. So Super Perils of Baking, Game 5 from Lily Mo, June 3rd. Unfortunately, no Vita. We cannot put it on Vita. Little tidbit, we were building this game natively on Vita in the beginning. And like we'd built all of our games, and then we had to port it over. So thanks, Sony.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it.
Oh, yeah.
Jean-Claude Brulé wrote in, said, "Hey, Colin, congrats on your soon-to-be-released Super Perils of Baking. Now that you have published a few games with Lilymo, how is it publishing your games on different platforms? Does one company have more hoops to jump through than others? Are PS5 native apps any more difficult to publish than PS4 native? Any insight would be appreciated. Many thanks." So I wanted to take this moment to give a shout out to Ben Smith, who's our associate producer. Last Day Media is also our associate producer at Lilymo, and he deals with all the developers or the publishing stuff. And it is annoying. It's a lot of different things. That's why you need someone to do it. I will say we applied for Game Pass and were declined. So that's what we were waiting for. We actually had wanted to announce the game a little sooner, maybe even get it out a little sooner. We were waiting to hear from Microsoft. We finally heard, and they said, nay, sir, we don't want your game. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. They didn't say it quite that mean, of course. Let's see. Oh, Thomas Kritz. Did I read that one? I don't think I didn't read this one. He says, "Hi, Last Stand crew. Just watched the Super Perils of Baking trailer on Patreon, and I've got to say the game looks awesome. 2D platformers are my favorite genre of games, so I'm glad to see these games come back. I've never played the original, so I'm looking forward to playing the game for the first time. I also want to say thanks for all the hard work of remaking the game. It would have been really easy to just re-release the game. I know I'm not speaking alone when I say it won't go unnoticed. You have a day one purchase from me when the game comes out. Thanks again, Thomas from Kentucky." Thank you, Thomas. I should have probably read that a little earlier. It does allow me to reiterate, though, that I'm glad to make a game like this, because it is, like 2D platformers today, they're like pretty hardcore. When you think of 2D platformer, you think of like Super Meat Boy or what was the game with like the little rabbit character that was Metroidvania game that was really good?
The rabbit?
Fist?
No. Well, that's one too. But it's like it was the really popular one. It wasn't like really a rabbit. They were like ghost kind of. Why can't I think of the goddamn game?
Hollow Knight?
Yeah, Hollow Knight. Like there are these games that there's an association with 2D and difficult.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the thing that's Shovel Knight, right? Like the Cyber Shadow and all this shit. They're all hard games. we wanted to do something that was a little more accessible because, in fact, on SNES and Genesis, as I'm sure you guys know, like those games existed. There were a shit ton of 2D platformers. Not all of them were hardcore. And I would consider Super Mario World to be one that is much more accessible. And that's kind of our what would you call a lodestar? Isn't that right? The North Star that you would point something towards.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anyway, I'm really excited about it. Hope you guys enjoy it when it comes out. We'll talk about it more. Alex Shoot wrote in and said, I don't mean to be this guy, but I have reached the end of my tether with the three of you. It's niche, not niche. Please correct yourselves, your grammar, and your lives. I don't know how many times I have to say this. We anglicize words in the English language, just like every other language does. We are using words on a constant basis that come from other things. In fact, you use the word grammar, which comes from the French grammaire, but you're calling it grammar, correct? Alex, correct? Oh,
it's niche. It's niche, and it's
I have no problem with people saying niche, but niche is a accepted anglicized version of the word and has been for hundreds of years. You know?
Yeah, I feel like those, for whatever reason, when I use, and I'm sure I'm using these incorrectly because I just use things how I damn well please, and you just have to deal with that.
Right.
But niche, I always think of like niche as like if something carves out a niche for itself. You know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, hey, this is like a niche is almost like a noun, where it's like, oh, this is like a place where this like obscure thing goes. But like a niche is like the concept of it. Like, oh, that's a niche premise. It's like a descriptive word for niche.
Interesting.
I know that's definitely not real. That's definitely not how it's supposed to be. That's how I've been using it for a long time, and no one's ever had a problem with it.
That actually sounds very correct to me for some reason.
It always sounded correct to me. It always sounded correct to me too, even though like no one told me that.
Damn, dude, I'm just surprised he didn't say grammaire.
Yeah, I know.
Guess you don't know your French like you know your English, Alex. Thanks for writing it. Have you ever heard of CBD? You probably have, but you may not know what it stands for or even what it does or what it is. Good thing you have me then. In short, CBD stands for cannabidiol. It comes from the marijuana plant, and it can be extremely effective in, well, soothing you. While CBD's cousin THC is what gets you high, and while that certainly has its own myriad uses, CBD acts more discreetly, but quite effectively. And the best CBD I've ever used comes from my friends at Feels. Indeed, you can learn more right now at feels.com/symbols. But if I might, allow me to explain a little bit more. The reason CBD is so appealing is because there are no tricks or gimmicks. By taking a few drops of Feels CBD tincture, you can help lull yourself to sleep, ease your anxiety and stress, and even help with bodily aches and pains. It's a wonder substance for many because it truly works. And while many of us like getting stoned, it's not necessary to derive CBD's benefits. That's because it doesn't get you stoned or impair you, and there's no residual effect either, like a hangover. If it sounds too good to be true, well, it isn't. As someone who has long suffered from anxiety, Feels CBD has helped me countless times. All you do is place some drops of their tincture under your tongue, and moments later you'll start feeling the positive effects. Heck, Feels even offers CBD mints if that's more your speed, but I'm a big fan of their tincture myself. Now, even after I've explained all of this to you, I have little doubt that some of you out there still have questions or concerns. That's why I'm also pleased to tell you about Feels' secret weapon. It's helpline staffed by real-life experts that can help guide you on your journey to and through using CBD, from specific cases where it might be helpful to the dosing you'd find most effective. And by becoming a Feels member, you can get CBD sent directly to your door each month, so you always have what you need without having to worry about running out. I'm a true believer in the efficacy of Feels' premium high-quality CBD, and I think you'll become a believer too once you try it. So start feeling better with Feels. Become a member today by going to feels.com/symbols. That's feals.com/SYMBOLS. And you'll get 50% off your first order with free shipping. That's feels.com/symbols to become a member and get 50% automatically taken off your first order with free shipping. Again, that's feels.com/symbols for high quality premium CBD that can help you sleep better, experience less anxiety, alleviate bodily aches and pains, and more. Adam Razik wrote in and said, hello, Sacred Symbols gentlemen. I just wanted to say that the Kyle Rittenhouse joke during last week's show caught me off guard so much that I almost dropped a weight on my head during my workout routine. I love listening to
another dead listener.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. This is a death wish podcast. I love listening to Sacred Symbols at the gym, but it's starting to become a health risk because of how funny the three of you can be sometimes. If I had gotten my head crushed by the weight, at least I would have died with a huge smile on my face. Thanks for all the unexpected and potentially lethal laughs. Thank you, Adam. Glad you're safe.
I don't think you would have been smiling, bro. Like,
No.
I don't think that would have been a smile, man. I think you're really overestimating.
If you're smiling, it's because you're a vegetable. But I appreciate that someone made a picture. I don't know where I saw it of Kyle Rittenhouse with the character that you were talking about, Dustin, and it is totally true that it looks like Kyle Rittenhouse. I will cop to that. It's a pretty apt reference, actually, which is what makes it so funny. So well done. Who keeps sucking all my yak straw? I wrote in. Said, hello, Sacred Symbols crew. I am here today to drive a wedge between a son and his father. Colin said in a discussion on Knockback that he loves the show Home Improvement and he thinks Tim Allen is hilarious. Chris, on the other hand, states constantly on Snark Take that he hates Tim Allen and that Home Improvement is an absolutely idiotic show. Let the Family Feud begin. Chris, I didn't know that you felt this way about Tim Allen and Home Improvement. What's your take on this?
It's just a terrible show. Like, to me, it's like when I think about, because the thing is, like, when I think about Home Improvement and I think about old sitcoms that have like stood the test of time or that have like been kind of carried into the modern world via like memes or like highly shareable clips and stuff. And I feel like Home Improvement it existed where it existed and then it died and then no one talked about it ever again. Like you're constantly seeing like that Seinfeld constantly keeps reemerging into the public consciousness. Most recently it was that it was like the Kramer with the red, the Kenny Rogers chicken light.
Right.
And he's like, people were like memeing that. It's like, oh, what's going on in there? It's like, it's the Hunger Games, Jerry.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's the Covenant, Jerry.
Yeah, it's the Covenant, Jerry. And it's like, there are all these ways that like really good shows like kind of persist. But Tim Allen just sort of, and also there's just like the stand up that Tim Allen has where he just barks constantly. He's like in person.
That's the best part.
I don't get it. Like it reminds me of like when like PewDiePie would scream, it's just like, what is this? Like, I don't understand. Maybe it's because I don't own like a Tool Time public access show. So
that is why you don't understand it. You have to have that show to understand. I should get a Tool Time shirt. I don't know why I've never done that.
You should.
I just totally disagree with you on this. So here's the thing is that people that have listened to me for a long time will remember a guy named Ryan Clements. He's a writer in the industry now. I think most recently he wrote True Colors, the Life is Strange game. Yeah. And he works actually on Valorant now, I think. And back in the day, we worked at IGN together. In fact, we started the same day at IGN, July 16th, 2007, as full-time employees. And he was an editor on IGN PlayStation as well. And he was one of the co-hosts on Podcast Beyond. He was a good buddy of mine. And he and I used to go to lunch every day at the old IGN office and then bring the lunch back and sit in the break room and watch Home Improvement reruns. They were on at like 1 o'clock or something on Fox or some Fox Family or something like that.
Yeah.
I used to sit there and watch it. And you're right. Because growing up, I watched so much TV like a lot of us did, especially in my era, because we had the internet. Like I didn't get the internet in my house until I was 12. Which is pretty early, 96, 95, 96. It's pretty early. So you can imagine a life before that when you really had nothing to do.
That's around the time that I got it too.
Yeah, so that's like a good dial-up 33.6 modem, 28.8 modem, whatever. So I was watching so much TV at that time, and it just comes and goes. And Home Improvement was just one of those shows. It was on ABC, I remember, and all this. But when I started sitting down and watching it, like back to back to back to back over months, I was like, this show is fucking funny. And we were like laughing out loud. Tim Allen is like I find Tim Allen to be very funny and very charming. And you know what reaffirmed it in me is that I think it's over now, but he did that Fox show for years, Last Man Standing, which is basically Home Improvement, where he owns an outdoor shop instead of working on this show. And that show is hysterical too. Like that show is funny. And what I think what's funny about it is just, it's kind of wholesome. It's a little bit inappropriate. But there's something about Tim Allen and his self-deprecation that I quite like. So I'm happy to stand for Tim Allen all day. And I'm surprised, Chris, that you don't give him a little bit more OG energy because do you know that I'm sure you know about the whole cocaine thing in the 80s with him, right?
Oh, no. That's the funniest thing he's ever done.
That's amazing that he like turned on people. You could have went to prison for like the rest of his life. And like got out of that. And so it's like he has some interesting origins and yeah.
No, he's an interesting guy. I just like I watch Home Improvement and I'm just slack-jawed by it. Like I'm just staring at it. I don't know what I don't know. Like I think it's just it's very I guess it's very Midwest. I guess
Definitely.
there's part of it that's
Definitely.
very much like that sensibility. And
It's blue collar
like
and conservative, I think, too.
It's blue collar and it's also got like this air of wholesomeness, which I just loathe in a lot of television. Like it's why I can't stand Full House either.
Oh yeah,
like
Full House is
Full House is just, it's like the opposite end where it's like it's so wholesome that it becomes just cynically loathsome. Like I hate everything about that show. Why does he have a comedian friend living in his basement who's a ventriloquist? It's insane, that premise of that show. If you watch a single episode from like the middle of that show, you'll be absolutely staggered by how bonkers that premise is.
Kimmy the neighbor.
But I don't know. I just like I got a lawnmower. Me and Sweetie always we would make Tim Allen jokes, and it would always end up just barking for 5 straight minutes because that's just what it was.
Yeah, it was weird that was his thing. Very much a product of the 90s, that show. It was yeah. Yeah, like that. It's got that fucking.
Colin, did you play the Home Improvement Super Nintendo game though?
No, I didn't. I actually think
horrible.
that I think Dagan. So Dagan writes for Pat Contry. I don't know if anyone knows that. Dagan's my brother. Pat Contry is like a really popular retro game guy, and he writes these like compilations of old console games, and he did NES, SNES, and stuff. And Dagan is written for those, and I think he wrote the Home Improvement write-up, if I'm not mistaken, for that.
Oh my god!
Like Dagan gets like all of the trash. You know, Pat does like Zelda, Mega Man, Castlevania, blah, 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 and then Dagan gets like just the bottom of the barrel shit.
Where Tim Allen is fighting velociraptors in a Metroidvania maze.
Right. It's a very weird game. Very weird game.
That game is schizophrenic, to say the least.
I've seen playthroughs of it, but I didn't have it as a kid. Okay. And then I would have never rented. I wasn't into Home Improvement yet. That's the thing, is I didn't become into Home Improvement until.
Well, you also probably wouldn't buy a video game based on a live action sitcom when you're a kid, you know? Like that's like the least interesting TV to you at that age. It's like, oh, I can't wait to play The Nanny on Sega Genesis.
The Nanny.
Like,
yeah,
I actually like that show. From what I remember,
talked about that a few months ago.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time since I've seen that show, but I remember liking it. I probably wouldn't now.
Mr. Sheffield. Yeah, it's a great show. I don't know why that's come up twice on this show now, but it's anyway. All right, what am I talking about? What else? Oh, okay, let's get into the news here. Now it's time to get into the thing. Well, not the real news, but there's some smaller things to talk about here. I wanted to start at the top. We can't ignore it. On Sacred Symbols Plus, I interviewed Hasan Karaman. I finally got the man, the myth, the legend, Hasan Karaman, to sit down with me for an hour, and I talked to him, and I asked him everything I wanted to ask him. This thing's been making the rounds. Lots of new patrons, lots of views on YouTube, getting written about and covered. It's cool. I haven't heard from you guys about what you've thought about this, because Dustin, you were there for it, so you heard it as it was happening, and Chris, I think you listened to it.
Yeah.
So actually, Chris, let's start with you. What did you make of this interview? I mean, what did you make of this coverage and what we learned? I must say that I am sorry that maybe people have been left more confused, but I did everything I could, and all I can say is I'm very pleased that I got access, because I asked them the questions that I wanted to ask. That's all I can control. So what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I thought you asked the right questions. I thought the motion capture on Hasan Karaman was very convincing.
Seriously.
No, but I don't know. I left that interview with definitely, obviously, more insight into. I definitely have a feeling that, okay, this is definitely like somebody who's just in way over their head. Is kind of where I kind of left at the end of it. But also, there are just so many more questions based on how much we know now. It's just that those questions are less mysterious. Like they're less ethereal. It's less about like, what is this? Where did it come from? And more like, how is this even working based on what we know about it? Like the whole 30K thing, really, like that. I rewound that a couple times to make sure I heard it correctly. And I still am not quite sure if I did, but it was an interesting interview, and I think that is just objectively true in the sense that like it's being talked about in a way that I don't think a lot of other interviews with this feller has been. So,
well, I think the one thing I wanted to try to do, first of all, I've had what you would consider contentious or interrogative interviews before. But
Yeah.
my whole thing is I want to be friendly, I want to be fair, polite. And I think some people were disappointed. It's like, man, why didn't you nail him? Why didn't you do? And I'm like, I'm not here to like, gotcha, motherfucker. That wasn't what I was trying to do. I just wanted to get the information out there. People listening and watching can make your own conclusions, and people have, running the entire gamut from this is conclusively Hideo Kojima, which there is a whole strand of that now, like a whole new strand of it. And then going obviously all the way to the other end where it's like, oh my God, what's going on here? So I think people that were looking for me to like dunk on Hasan or something or try, I'm like, I was never going to do that. But what I can say is that I was unconvinced by many of his answers. They were weird, a lot of the answers. And what's unfortunate about this is that I've never really had an interview like this in such that I've never had to go into an interview skeptical that the game exists. And so what I was talking to Mike and I was saying, what this reminds me of a little bit is, and I brought this up in the past, I think on the show, is the Order 1886 about how weird the preview coverage was for that game. And I talked about when the game was revealed at E3 that year in 2013, I guess it was, I had a brief interview with the guys from the studio, but when I went to see them, they showed me the trailer again, the same trailer we saw. And then I had a few minutes with them and I'm like, I had to spend all that time asking them about what the game was because what they could have shown me was just a screenshot of the game and I could have figured out it was the third person cover based, blah, blah, blah. But I had to spend all this time kind of getting the operative information before I could even get to the nitty gritty. And then I was out of time. And here it's kind of similar in the sense that I had to ask him like, I've never asked someone like, who's funding your game? I've never heard of a game announced that its publisher is secret. I've never heard of a game where you won't tell anyone who is working on it. I've never heard of a game made in Unreal Engine
NDA or something, right?
Right. Like all the stuff NDA'd, and that's fine. I mean, I'm not trying to push you into a corner with those kinds of things, but the thing that really, there were two things that I thought were weird, like not above all else, but two things that stood out to me amongst others. The first thing is the $30,000 thing. He said the game has cost about $30,000 so far. Super Perils of Baking costs substantially more than that to make. And I'm not saying that for any other reason than that we're not making a 3D Unreal Engine shooter. We made a 2D SNES clone, right? So that really hung out to me. And then the other thing I thought was weird was I asked him about that random game on his PSN profile. And I didn't find that sufficient either because he was saying basically he made this small game for his cousin or something, but it would have suggested that his cousin had debug access or that he kind of, I don't know, somehow got this game published on the PSN in the back end and then was going to share it via code or something. There's just too many things that didn't make a lot of sense. But I think that people, can suss that out themselves. I don't think I need to sit there and be like, well, got you here and got you there. When I felt like something didn't make sense, like the money issue, for instance, or his outsourcing claims about all of that, I said it to his face. I mean, it's just like that doesn't jive. But I can't say that I know any more about this now. I don't. I have no idea.
You should have asked him if the moon was made of cheese, would he eat it?
Is that Danny Carey or what? Not Danny Carey. Danny Carey's the drummer of Tool. Harry Carey, right?
Carey, that's right.
It's Jiminy Glick.
Oh, that's Jiminy Glick.
Yeah.
Wait,
it is.
We brought up this conversation. I remember bringing it up and saying, was that Jiminy Glick? And someone said no.
It definitely was because I saw it like yesterday. So it's
That's
like
awesome.
fresh in my brain.
No, I believe you because didn't that when
it was Will Ferrell doing Jiminy Glick or something like that.
No, that's Will Ferrell doing.
Chris, you are wrong.
That's Will Ferrell.
That's the same thing, right?
No, Jiminy Glick is Martin
Harry
Short.
Carey. No, you're right. You're right. It is
that's Will Ferrell doing Harry Carey, who is
which is the same fucking bit, by the way.
Yeah, it's Harry Carey.
That's the same exact person.
Harry Carey's real. That was what. Yeah, if you were a hot dog, would you eat yourself? Like that kind of that kind of shit. Dustin, what did you make of the interview with Hasan?
So there's a couple thoughts that I had. First of all, just in observing the comments, because like you said, there's everything under the sun as far as what you could think of this interview, whether it's full-blown tinfoil hat Kojima to people that were saying like, oh, we need to ease up, Hasan, take your time on the game. So everywhere in between. Some people I feel like, how about this? In some ways, I want to give Hasan the benefit of the doubt in a few circumstances because English is not his first language.
Yes.
Right.
True.
And so there was a couple things that people were really hung up on that I just don't know if he quite said the right way. But that is not a full blanket there that I would say about this interview. And it's funny because it's Colin, you were mentioned about talking to Micah. I was talking to Holly about this interview and this whole process because it all came together. That's something maybe we should get into at some point about how this interview even came together. Was very quick and very sudden and happened in a very interesting way. But what I was telling Holly is that I wonder if my theory from many months ago that this is a Elizabeth Holmes Theranos situation where Hasan was able to secure some funding of some sort and get some big partners on board. And maybe there was no game. Maybe there was no talent to back up what was sold to these people at the time. And Hasan in the interview mentions about money drying up and things being self-funded. And it's one of those, I don't want to make blanket statements like Hasan is a liar. We don't know. We can only gather what we think may be true based on the interview. But it's one of those things where I wonder if there's certain things that he is stretching the truth or only giving you a select portion that is true and hiding the very relevant details. There's a lot of strange aspects, and you're right. It is ironic. One of the most ironic things to me about this is that we really don't. It doesn't feel like we know much more at all. It feels like we know so much more and nothing at the same time.
Yeah, I feel like I have new questions, but
right.
But I will say this: I'm not going to get into the specific things he and I have said behind closed or behind the scenes to each other, but he did email saying that kind of frantically. You were on the email saying like, "Please stop talking about this. Please don't talk about this. People are threatening us and all this." And I'm like, first of all, it's unacceptable. Please log these things. Tell that to the police. We have no intention of bringing heat down on you at all.
Right.
And we're not going to, bang the drum on this over and over again. But it's an interesting story. And I think the one thing that's lost on him, I said this in an email to him months ago. And I think one of the things that's really lost on him, and I think we can all agree is like, do you take responsibility for anything? Like, is anything your fault? I don't understand how it's anyone's fault but your own that this is happening to you. Right. And
yeah,
I tried to give him, before he emailed that stuff I said just previously, I emailed him and we thanked him. He actually thanked us for it. See, the thing is that after the interview was conducted, he was high on it. He promoted it publicly. He emailed us and thanked us for having him on. It was only after people reacted poorly to it that he was distraught about it again. So he thought he produced something positive, and I didn't think it was going to be as negative, frankly, as people had received it either. But I don't know what or who Hasan Karaman is. I just know that, and actually, I'll just read this from Nick Kowalchuk, who wrote and said, "Slitter me timbers, gentlemen."
Oh my God.
Can we get a debrief from the Hasan Karaman interview? I'm no industry expert, but why did most of the things he said come off as not credible? I found it interesting that he could describe facts about the game, but stumbled through his own personal history. Why was everything under NDA? Why did it feel like every time Colin pressed him on something, there was a misunderstanding to clarify? It just came off as jumbled and unconvincing. I think that's basically where I am. It was jumbled and unconvincing, but I don't know how you can make a game like that for $30,000. I don't know how I feel like Sony in some way. Well, actually, let me back up again. He was even contesting that Jason Schreier, who I have beef with Jason Schreier at Bloomberg, but he's a real journalist. He doesn't fuck around with that. I mean, he was basically saying Jason just misquoted him and made shit up. I mean, that was basically the insinuation, right, Dustin? I mean, you were there listening to it. And so from the very get-go, it's just like nothing is your responsibility. Jason misquoted you. I don't know. It's frustrating, but I want to respect his wishes to not like. Some people out there are just like, we're over this. I do want to say that the argument, I'm like really stuttering here. The argument that we shouldn't be covering this is one that doesn't resonate with me from the audience. When people are like, why are you giving this guy airtime? Why are we paying attention to this too? Because it's fucking interesting. That's why. And if more interesting things come up, I'm going to do it again. Right. But I'm not going to just cover this game for no reason. We have nothing else to say. I said, and I promised the audience, if I ever got access to Hasan, I promised him himself, if I ever got access, I'm going to ask you questions that no one else is going to ask you. And I did. And what we do with those now is up to us. But I do ask everyone out there, and I don't need this. I actually said this to him because I said in an email, I'm like, I kind of reject the insinuation that our people are like being horrible to you. It's like, I don't own the actions of other people. But it is worth saying, as it is once in a while, I guess, you shouldn't be acting hostily to anyone in any way on the internet. And if you're threatening Hasan or doing anything like that, that's unacceptable and wrong. And I hope they fucking catch you if that's what you're doing, by the way. I know he's logging these things and all of that. So there's no reason to be disrespectful, but we can be incensed and curious and confused and befuddled, and I'll continue to be that. And I'm sorry that it's worked out like this for Hasan with his game, but we just, the buck stops with someone, and it's not me in this case. So
yeah.
Anything else to say, Dustin?
No, I think we've covered it. And like you said, when there's an update, if there's an update, I'm assuming there will be at some point, we will cover it again if it deems interesting enough for the show. So
fair enough. All right, let's get into some other things here. Just an FYI, MLB The Show 22 is out on PS4 and PS5. So if you're looking forward to playing a baseball game this year, as you might be every year, that game is now available for you to play. It's also on Game Pass if you're over on Xbox. Gran Turismo 7 patch 1.11 is out. Joey Gondoliger wrote in and said, hey boys, as of Thursday, April 7th, patch 1.11 for Gran Turismo 7 is here. Polyphony Digital promised better payouts, and they completely delivered. It is now possible to earn more than $20 worth of credits in about an hour. This, to me at least, completely negates all the bad press about microtransactions in the game. I'd also like to commend Sony on fixing their mistakes extremely quickly. To have such big fixes only a month into this new live service game is a huge difference compared to other studios who leave their marquee studio-defining games to languish for months with little to no change. If Sony takes this proactive approach to all their upcoming live service games, I believe that Sony will be a very welcome player in the live service space. I'm truly excited for what the future holds for Sony's live service games if such a fast update is any indication of what's coming up. So we are having Z28 Gaming back on the show. I can confirm that. Sacred Symbols Plus in the coming weeks to do a review, discussion, and spoiler cast, in quotes, about Gran Turismo 7. We'll get into all of this. None of us are playing it so in any meaningful way. So I did want to acknowledge this. So I also wanted to acknowledge, though, Joey, your letter is appreciated, but someone else wrote in with a whole new series of complaints. And I was originally going to use that letter, but I'm like, sometimes you guys just never stop. Joey, thank you for writing. Way back around when we started Sacred Symbols, one of our first sponsors was Mack Weldon, and I am amped to welcome them back into the fold because I remain, years later, an everyday user of their products. Seriously, I'm wearing a pair of Mack Weldon sweatpants as we speak, and I am, without a shade of exaggeration, wearing Mack Weldon gear in basically every podcast I record. I wear them every day, generally. I live in these friggin' sweatpants. They've made wearing jeans unbearable, but I'm getting way ahead of myself. At mackweldon.com/sacred, you can see what I'm talking about straight away, but in reality, it's easy enough to sell you on them in audio form. With spring basically here, it's time to emerge from our winter slumbers and get some new gear to wear, perhaps some sweatshirts or even the mysterious sweatshorts. But like I said, I am all about Mack Weldon sweatpants. I think I've owned some 10 pairs in the last few years, and I'm also a huge fan of their boxer shorts, which accommodate my tree trunk-like hockey-playing thighs and my, anyway, the thing about clothes is that you get what you pay for, and if you seek out and pay for quality, you get it in turn. Mack Weldon is extremely high quality, no doubt about it. And since they employ their vaunted daily wear system, it just so happens that their different items just naturally kind of go with each other, especially convenient for fashion-deficient people like me. But really, I'm all about that comfort, and Mack Weldon nails comfort. You know when you get the right piece of clothing and it feels premium and well-built and durable and right all in one? That's Mack Weldon in a nutshell, my friends. It's awesome to have them back on Sacred Symbols because it was through their original ads that I became a customer to begin with, and I remain so to this day. So check out Mack Weldon for yourself and save 20% off your first order. Simply visit mackweldon.com/sacred and enter the promo code SACRED. That's mackweldon.com/SACRED with the promo code SACRED. Again, visit mackweldon.com/sacred and enter the promo code SACRED for 20% off. Find your perfect look this spring with Mack Weldon. They come highly recommended from Sacred Symbols. PS3 emulation. There are rumors percolating that Sony might be further along with PlayStation 3 emulation than it seems. And in fact, we can, I guess, kind of confirm that because Tom, as we mentioned earlier from Moore's Law is Dead on Sacred Symbols Plus, talked extensively about PlayStation 3 emulation. And guys, he explained something really interesting that I just wanted to pass along. I encourage everyone to go listen to the rest of the episode if they want. I had never thought about this before. He was basically saying that cell processor on PS3 is so complicated that the way developers dealt with it was through a series of workarounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these workarounds and these tricks that they made over the years are different for all of the games. So there might be a team that does something a certain way and you can replicate that. But there are other teams that just totally manipulated cell in a different way. And so what needs to happen and what they're doing apparently is that you have to make a bunch of like boutique sort of micro virtual consoles or emulators. And this PS3 emulator will play Naughty Dog games. And this PS3 emulator will play this game. And this PS3 emulator will play only these games. And that it has to kind of be done on an individual basis like that because of the sheer level of manipulation on PlayStation 3 to get anything to run on it. And I never thought about that. That I'm not smart technically or in any other way, but that makes some sense to me. So I wanted to share that. Have you ever heard anything about that, Chris? That seems interesting to me.
I've definitely heard that developers, I mean, it's no secret that, I mean, even with more uniform technology, developers find all sorts of ways to manipulate their way around limitations of existing hardware. It makes sense to me that the cell processor, as peculiarly specific as it was, would have required very unique workarounds. It's still just a really, I don't know, man. It's just kind of wild that that they're going to need to have like unique emulators per title. That's just a very, very interesting. So I always assumed that would be. I guess I haven't really thought that much about emulation really because I just don't really care about it. I try to be as holistic in my consumption of classic media as possible. I still have all my original consoles and all that, but I guess I never thought about the idea of there being multiple emulators so much as I thought of maybe the existence of a simulated cell architecture. You know, almost like a simulated version of the PS3's architecture by which, you know, most other emulators would function kind of equivalently. This is an interesting solution. It's going to take a lot of time, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's what he was saying was that we wouldn't know the difference, right, on our end. Like we get the PS1 game launches, something happens in the beginning, and then it's like the PS1 startup, and it's running the emulator. The same thing would happen with PS3, and we wouldn't know the difference, but they do.
Right.
And so Tom was saying that there's some conjecture that even the Uncharted games coming to PS3 in that collection or PS4 in that collection in 2016 was some sort of acknowledgement that they could not get those games to run. Like, and there was some urgency to at least get something off of the PS3, especially in anticipation of PS4. And he was saying something that I'm not surprised about, which is that they've been doing this for years. Like they have games running. It's just that they don't have the sufficient workflow, I guess, to get this sort of thing done. And I just never thought about it. Dustin, do you have anything to add? I mean, this is, again, I'm not a technical person, but this makes a lot more sense. In other words, Sony was able to make a PlayStation 2 emulator and then drop ROMs into it, and they work. This time they make an emulator, kind of. Then they drop the ROM into it. Then they have to manipulate the emulator, package it all together, and that's how it's going to come, right? And so each one has to be manipulated in a certain way. So it's not, to Chris's point, it's not that they're fucking around with cell in a specific way. It's that they were so outside of the SDK when they were making some of these games that they don't know, that they can't streamline a way to make them work. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. And to be fair, to my understanding, this is true. I don't want to say in every emulator. I don't know if that's 100% true, but you saw this happen with Nintendo Switch Online with their Nintendo 64 emulator, specifically the Zelda ROM that they had initially at launch did not have fog effects working at all. And so they had to go in and customize it to actually work. And eventually they fixed it. So while this happens in other emulators, the amount that, at least the understanding that I got from listening to the episode with Tom, is just that the amount of customizing is way, way more extensive, like you said, based on some of the workarounds that each individual studio would decide to do when working on the PlayStation 3. And so I think I said this last week, is just that the thing that I think that a lot of people should understand is that the PS3 was not like the 360. The PS3 was exotic hardware. And so, yeah, Xbox put the work in, no doubt. But they didn't have quite the uphill climb that Sony did. I think that they'll make it work in certain instances. But I would never expect there to be a blanket backwards compatible solution for PlayStation 3.
One thing I will say, though, is I understand that it's a lot of work to get this exotic hardware replicated. At the same time, it's been a very long time. You know what I mean? Like, I don't imagine that Fat Princess was taking that many unique. You know what I mean? Like, I don't imagine games like Fat Princess was taking all these, like, oh man, we can't get the Fat Princess to animate properly unless we tweak the cell in this way. I'm sure Fat Princess worked fine on base PlayStation 3 SDK. And I'm sure that, or a base PlayStation 3 stats, or whatever the hell you want to call it. It's games like, I guess, Uncharted, or like the ones that push the envelope a little bit, where they're trying to squeeze every bit of juice out of the machine, that I would imagine a lot of these workarounds are more related to. And to me, that's not that many titles. That's like a handful. You have like your Uncharted trilogy, you have your infamous duology, and then you have Resistance, and then you got a handful of others that I'm sure people would like to see.
Yeah, Killzone 2 and 3, probably.
Yeah, Killzone 2 and 3. But it's a pretty manageable list of games, I would argue.
Yeah, I think so too.
So like, to me, it's just like, I understand that, yeah, for sure, Microsoft definitely had it easier because they built their console in a less befuddling way. But it's also been like a really long time.
Yes.
And they've had a long time to figure this out, especially for the titles that presumably, again, would be the main beneficiaries of this specific tweaking of the cells. At least that's my layman view of it.
I don't disagree with you. I think it makes more... It illustrates better why we haven't seen Infamous and other games come forward, but also makes it more conspicuous why the work hasn't gone into getting those games over. And you listen to it, Dustin, so you know that he said this. Tom said, he's like, this will be a problem that they will solve by PlayStation 6. I mean, that was what he literally said. Like, there'll be like a universal... And because what we were saying, and we've said this on the show in the past, is that once you clear the hurdle to get something running on PS4, you're good forever, right? Like, you don't have to worry about it anymore. You just need to get these games pulled forward. And there are some key games on there, like God of War 3, right? Like there are games that are just on PlayStation 3 that you're never going to get again unless they do something.
God of War 3 got ported over though, didn't it?
Oh, did it? Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. You're right. It did. Yeah. Oh, that's right. God of War 3 got like a standalone release, didn't it? It wasn't part of a collection.
But not 1 and 2.
On PS4?
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
It got a standalone release. I totally forgot about that. You're right. So yeah, Infamous 1, Infamous 2, Killzone 2, Killzone 3, Resistance 1, 2, 3, and a few others are all we need to get pulled over. Even The Last of Us got ported immediately to PS4, so that's really not a big deal, but I don't know, man. It's disappointing, but people can go listen to get a little more clarification. We're going to have much more technical acumen now on Sacred Symbols Plus with the help of Tom, and so join us on Patreon to listen to that, patreon.com/laststandmedia. Sony is apparently talking pretty openly about acquiring more studios. IGN reports from the official PlayStation podcast, which is a Sony product. I frankly don't recommend you listen to it because they can't say anything bad about anything on it. But they say, or they had an interview with Jim Ryan, our friend Jim Ryan, good game, number one gamer Jim Ryan, and he says on the podcast, quote, "We're in a really good place with PlayStation Studios right now, and we have been for the past few years. The critical success and the commercial success of the games that they've been making, that has given us permission to invest heavily in content creation. We're growing our studios organically, and we're growing through acquisition. We acquired 5 studios during the course of 2021. We're in discussions with Bungie, and we have more planned. This is getting us into a cycle, a virtuous cycle, where success begets success, end quote. I don't know what is with this statement, virtuous cycle. I think they wrote this on the PlayStation blog recently too.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I think they don't realize that that's a misnomer. Virtue has something to do with morality. There's no such. They're in a moralistic cycle with their game. It makes no sense. You're in a virtuous cycle. The fuck does that mean?
It's literally just marketing. It's like a buzz. It's just a buzzword.
Like I'm pretty
virtuous
sure
cycle doesn't mean anything.
Virtuous definition. Yeah, having or showing high moral standards. The fuck are you talking about? Like you have to do. I don't understand what the hell is going on over there. Nonetheless, more studios incoming. Chris, anything you have your eye on?
I mean, I struggle to even imagine what's left. That's kind of like, for me, I'm just thinking of like, man, you have Embracer with everything that they own. You have Sony now kind of with Bungie and all of their first party. You have Microsoft acquiring everything under the sun. Outside of the big publishers, like what is really left that is worth acquiring? Like I can't think of any that I would be like chomping at the bit to have access to, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there are a few that I can think of. I just don't know that any of them particularly make any sense. We can agree that major Japanese publishers are off the table now, right? Like Capcom and all of these are doing fine. Square Enix, none of those are going to be interested, I don't think. And
no,
I don't think Square or Sony would be interested in them either. I also think that would just be really bad PR. So then you have to step down a little bit. I keep coming up to From Software. From Software has a parent company, so do a lot of developers. It doesn't matter. Doesn't mean you can't buy them from the parent company, Katakawa in this case.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're interested either. They are getting courted left, right, and center, I'm sure. And I just saw, I don't know the guy's name, but they apparently like sent this huge package to this famous fantasy author. Did you see this, Dustin?
Yeah, the Wheel of Time author.
Right. And they're like trying to get him involved. And apparently they are going to make a Soulsborne game together. The guy's apparently like all about it. And it's apparently already has a plan. So I wouldn't worry about them. I think of companies like Arc System Works, who also have a lot of tethers, corporate tethers, but would certainly be available. But I don't know if they would make any sense. Remedy, we're going to talk about in a little while. I think Remedy has way too many tethers now to even be available. I don't even know why you would want them, since you would have to see all of these games through before you even got anything out of them. So yeah, I don't think they're on the table. IO Interactive, maybe you would think, but they're doing a James Bond game. So I agree with you. I don't know what to think of it either. Dustin, anything come to mind for you?
I think that you brought up Arc System Works, and if we're talking from a strategy perspective, I think that they would make a lot of sense with Sony's new focus on esports and buying Evo, that they would maybe want to own a lot of the games that are present in that competition. And we've talked about other ways where they want to monetize esports significantly. So that would make a lot of sense to me. But overall, like you said, like Remedy, which we're going to talk about later, I don't know what's going on there. And I'm trying to, like, who else? You already mentioned From, which
again, IO is the only other one that I really could even think of that would be. And then there's a bunch of like Moon Studios. There's like a bunch of teams, but none of them change the game. I don't know.
Yeah, Moon's got kind of a bad stink on him right now too, because of there's like a whole thing going on over there about like workplace.
I saw that.
So the thing is, it's hard for me to be in to put my head in the space of somebody who's trying to acquire, because like my personal bias says leave these people alone.
Yes, I agree.
You know what I mean? Like it's hard for me to go against that nature of just like, let IO do what they do, let From do what they do. Like too many things are being like absorbed into the board right now, and I don't know.
That's something people say to me is like, well, Dustin, wouldn't you be so excited if Sony bought From Software? I'm like, no. The only benefit that I would see of Sony, I mean, I don't know if it's even a benefit. It's like, I don't want Xbox or PlayStation to buy them. If I had to pick one or the other, of course I would want Sony to buy them over Microsoft, but I really don't want either one, because they're still just kind of independent enough where they're like, yeah, we're going to do a game with Activision and Sekiro, and who knows what else they have going on.
Yeah, and especially now after Elden Ring's like breakout, like insane success, like there's no way they're going to be like, oh, you mean you want us to be on a on a single platform.
That would honestly
Why?
might benefit them since they can't seem to figure out any platform from a technical perspective.
That's true. Yeah.
But being on just PlayStation didn't help them though with Bloodborne. So
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah, and with significant XDev help from Japan Studio. But yeah, I agree. I don't necessarily mind this thing that they seem to be doing now, which is just seeding a bunch of new companies and seeing what happens. And then they came in and bought Haven, which I thought was a little strange, as we discussed. But to get money together and say like, oh, these guys made Call of Duty, give them $100 million. These guys came from BioWare, give them $100 million. These guys came from Ubisoft, give them $100 million. See what happens. That's more effective. And you have to assume if they make any big acquisitions, they might treat them like Bungie. You can imagine them buying from and then saying like, no, they're just going to do exactly what they do now. And that would be smart.
Yeah.
Arc System would be cool. I agree with you, Dustin. That would be interesting to get Guilty Gear and BlazBlue for Sony. It's exciting. Arc System owns Technos as well, which is like all the River City stuff, which I love. And it would be cool to unleash that as well with like AAA, like a AAA River City ransom would be fucking cool. Although River City Girls 2 is coming this year, I think, and I'm excited about that. Okay. What else here? Oh, I guess I should have put this in the correction, but we talked about kind of briefly because it happened during the last week's episode when we were recording, but that it looked like Konami published a Metal Gear Solid 35th anniversary website, but that website is fake. It's not from Konami. So, sorry. But there is more exciting, or I should say interesting news, guys. Though E3 is gone and Sony is silent, etc., etc., THQ Nordic, according to Push Square, sent out their so-called save the date. August 12th, 2022. They're going to have a gaming showcase. And it says here on the website, THQ Nordic, the presentation teases Outcast 2, A New Beginning, and Jagged Alliance 3. Other games that could show up include Saints Row, Destroy All Humans 2, Reprobed, SpongeBob SquarePants, The Cosmic Shake, etc. It's interesting. I like this kind of thing of having just a showcase. Let's just show some games. Let's have a little bomb drop and then go away and make the games and put them out again. Didn't expect THQ Nordic to be one of these companies that would do that. I'm happy. They have like 70 studios within that Embracer family. This is only THQ Nordic though. So it's only going to be a sliver of that family. So keep an eye out for that. I don't know if there's anything else to say about that. I don't know if you saw this, Dustin. Chrono Cross on PS4 apparently is horrible. This is I don't understand how you do something like this. It's a PS1 game. The review on Push Square says the game fluctuates constantly between 10 and 45 frames a second and is never locked to 60 frames. This is a PS1 game that got 2000.
What? It's authentic to the original, right?
Yeah, I guess so. It's like putting Mega Man in the Anniversary Collection and keeping like all the flicker, right? Like you can keep that if you want to have the realistic thing, but it doesn't need that now because you can run it 120 frames a second or whatever. So, Chris, I saw you take a knee there. What do you think?
Because this breaks my heart because it's like this is like a dedicated port and it runs poorly. So like I could just imagine the way that like this semi-automated back compat is going to function. Like I just because this is a dedicated individual game, you know, like this is a genuine re-release. This is like a port,
right,
of a PS1 game. This isn't like, oh, it runs it runs the original PS1 disc in your PS5. None of that. There's nothing crazy like that. So this is a new product built, you know, not from the ground up, but surely spec'd for relatively modern hardware. It's a PS1 game. There's no way it should have a hard time running on PS4. It's insane. Chris, a PS2 should be able to blast that thing out of the water. So like just the way that this dedicated port spells the future for the backwards compatible tier of the new PS Plus, it worries me a little bit.
Let me read
because if anything, a dedicated port would have more effort put into it than just like, you know, you know what I mean? Like there's something about that feels really worrying.
Yeah, with Chrono Cross. I mean, not some. Anyway, Dustin, what do we?
Yeah, it's not Emperor's New Groove for PS1.
On Push Square, this is from the reviewer is Robert Ramsey. I just want to read part of what he said here. That's right. Square Enix has somehow managed to destroy Chrono Cross's frame rate on modern hardware. The whole thing's supposed to run at a locked 60 frames per second. Why wouldn't it? but the frame rate fluctuates between what feels like 10 and 45 frames constantly. You can barely walk across the screen without the frame rate tanking to an embarrassing extent, and it gets even worse in battle.
I just don't understand why you even release something like this. And what's weird about it for OG PlayStation fans, you'll remember that Chrono Trigger, the SNES game, came to PS1 alongside. So it came in a collection with Final Fantasy IV. I think it was called Final Fantasy Chronicles or Anthology. It was one of those. And the other one was Final Fantasy V and Final Fantasy VI. And Chrono Trigger ran like shit on PS1. You can go read about it. It just ran for some reason like garbage. The menu took seconds to load. It was crazy. And there's just some spiritual successor with Chrono Cross and being this fucked up port again. And I read that they had already said, Square Enix already said, like, we have no plans for more Chrono games and stuff. And it's like, well, of course you don't. I mean, why would anyone be interested in the series if this is the disrespect you're going to show it? They're just so inconsistent. It's so strange to me. This game couldn't have been that expensive to make or to port, and you would just want to do it right. Just be like, okay, it's not ready. Like, we'll just figure it out, and then we'll release it when it's ready. Why is that so hard for studios to do and publishers to do? Really, publishers. Very frustrating.
Yeah.
Fucked. Chrono Cross. Stay away. Kotaku reports, I thought this was interesting, especially for you, Chris. I didn't know if you saw this, but the 2001 demo for previously unknown Gex Jr. leaks online. Did you see this at all? It's playable on PS1. And
it's so cute.
Yeah, it does look cute. Very colorful. The music's really fun. People will remember Gex. Did either of you guys play Gex as kids? You were a little young. Yeah?
I did.
So I didn't. I did not play Gex, but like
Undercover
my English
Gecko.
teacher was a dev on it. And I remember that being like, because he talked about it, like, because he knew that like some of the kids in the class were like interested in video games. He was like, oh yeah, I did like development on. Yeah, I think he was like an animator on the original Gex or something.
That's awesome.
I just thought that was like super interesting. This dude was like so weird. Dude lived in like Hong Kong forever. He's a weird guy, but yeah, that's all. That's my entire experience of Gex is just hearing that from my English teacher, being curious, and then looking up videos of it. It's a game I completely missed on PS1.
It's the original game came out in 1995. It was actually a 3DO game, and then it came to PS1. And I remember coming familiar with it in 97 when I started seeing ads for Enter the Gecko, which was the second Gex game, and that was natively released on PS1. And then there was a third one, which I'd never even Deep Cover Gecko, which was a late PS1 game. I never even saw that game, but it's been deceased ever since. What's interesting, of course, about Gex is that it's a Crystal Dynamics game. We're going to talk about Crystal Dynamics later. So there's just a little piece of interesting what could have been, if you want to go check that out.
I love that he has like a backwards cap. There's something so like really genuinely amusing about it.
Dustin, I wanted to throw this over to you.
Yeah.
Shueisha Games. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I put this in our Discord yesterday because I thought maybe you had heard of it. Apparently this is a pretty big Japanese manga publisher, and they are making a games vertical. So can you tell us a little bit about what's going on with this?
Yeah.
Please?
So Shueisha is the publisher behind Shonen Jump, which is probably what most people know here in the United States, which Shonen Jump is the specific vertical of manga, specifically manga that's targeted towards young adult males, we'll say. So like, I don't know, which not just males, because obviously there's tons of people that love stuff like My Hero Academia, One Piece, Dragon Ball, stuff like that. Also, of course, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure was once a Shonen Jump, which eventually it moved to their more like adult-focused version. But they've started their own game company, which makes a lot of sense, just because anime games are huge, and it's funny because the quality of them does not seem to really matter. It's just that if these games have these characters attached to them in one way or another, they sell like crazy. Specifically thinking about Jump Force recently, which has now been delisted, was like a huge seller despite not being a very good game. And it makes sense, I feel like, for them to kind of cut out the middleman here. They've been licensing a lot of these IPs, specifically Bandai Namco is probably the biggest one. And anime, whether you two like it or not, is just continually exploding outside of Japan. It's honestly shocking to me now, because I just remember And I'm sure that, someone like Dagan, of course, he's like an OG anime fan, remembers when no one even really knew about anime. I remember in like 2000, so this would have been when I was in like first grade in 2000, 2001. It was like there was a few kids that liked Dragon Ball Z, and this was like kind of this like weird and interesting show. And now, like, man, if you go to any like a mall that's still alive, there's just so many stores. You're going to see anime everywhere, like constantly. Anime, whether it's manga, whether DVDs or Blu-rays, whatever, merchandise, it's everywhere. So it makes so much sense for them to be like, okay, well, clearly the games are a big vertical. Let's go ahead and make our own developer. I think right now it said in this Kotaku article that they have a project for smartphones, which makes a lot of sense for the Japanese audience. I think my biggest question, though, is just yet to be seen is how extensive are they going to go? I mean, there's so many IPs, and there's some that are current, like One Piece. There's that big One Piece RPG that was announced. We've got the re-release of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure game coming out. So the sky's the limit, and I hope they make good games because there's so many cool anime IP that would make such good games, and we just keep getting just some real mediocre stuff.
Yeah.
My favorite anime game when I was young, during that Dagan era, was the SNES Ranma Half fighting game. I loved that game. Dagan came home with that one day. I was like, this is fucking awesome. This is an awesome game. And I feel like anime hasn't been shown a lot of respect in video games. We get a lot of anime games. We get a lot of anime style games. Some of them are good, but I feel like it's not quite up to snuff with where it should be. Jambi wrote into us on Patreon with a follow-up. It says, hey, CDC, just a quick question. What would be the definitive weeb ranking of the LSM crew? I can picture a situation where Maddie and Dustin battle it out for LSM Weeb Ambassador, but everyone else is a toss-up. Anyway, I hope you are doing well. Keep up the good work and gently caress that chicken. Thank you, Jambi, for writing. And Dustin, I'm curious where you stand on this. What are the Weeb bona fides here within the LSM family?
I mean, ultimately, I don't know. If me, Dagan, and Maddie could fusion combine like Dragon Ball Z, then we would be the ultimate weeb, because Maddie has the JRPG aspect down way better than me, and he watches a lot of anime that I don't know about. But then there's other instances where I mention certain like all-time classic anime like Evangelion, talk about Berserk with him, and he has no idea what I'm talking about. So there's some major blind spots there. But Dagan, like I said, he is the OG of all of this, and so it's a tough question, because there's the weebdom goes beyond just, there's manga, there's anime, there's JRPGs, there's a lot of angles to look at this.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All we know is that Chris is not one of them.
Yeah. If there was a ranking, I'm probably like last. I would imagine.
I would think so too.
Dragon Ball Z Budokai was cool, but I mean,
it's funny. We actually just did that knockback episode, Dagan and I, about our childhood bedrooms, and the thumbnail for it is a picture of my bedroom circa 2000, and I have Dragon Ball posters on my wall.
Oh yeah, dude, that was a Dragon Ball was popping. Like in 2000 to 2003 or 4, that was like in every young kid's bedroom. I think, like, even in that movie, what was that movie, Boyhood? I think did you hear about that movie where they filmed a kid for like actually like a decade and a half?
Yeah.
And they followed him like throughout his, and you could see like the bedroom from like 2000. It's like Dragon Ball. It's kind of crazy to see. Like, that movie's impressive from that standpoint because it's an effective time capsule.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Everything else sucks.
Someone had posted.
Yeah.
Did you see that there's like a time capsule at Nickelodeon Studios that was sealed in like 1995, and it's going to be open in 2045? And it's like, oh my god, what's going to be in that?
Oh wow,
it's going to be funny.
Dang.
That's going to be interesting.
But this one is more for you, I think, Chris, which is Trek to Yomi. We've talked about this game a few times on the show. It's been questionable when it was going to come out. It's this kind of black and white samurai game. It comes from Flying Wild Hog, which is interesting. Those are the guys that are best known for Shadow Warrior. And this is a game that they've been working on. I think like one of their spin-off studios had been doing it. So the game has a release date on PS4 and PS5 of May 5th. Are you going to play this one, Chris?
Yeah, I think so. I'm into samurai stuff for whatever. And I think it's largely Ghost of Tsushima that got me into it, because I think prior to that, I didn't really I don't know. I didn't really care that much. I was like always into ninja stuff, like Shadow of the Ninja on NES, and obviously Ninja Gaiden, and it's all cool. Like the Messenger and Cyber Shadow most recently. Those games always hit for me. But samurai stuff, it's just like I always felt like it's just slow ninjas.
Yeah, they're not
But
as cool
Ghost of Tsushima
ninjas. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like
I agree.
it's your grandpa's ninjas. But this looks cool. Like it kind of reminds me of Shadow Complex in the way that there's something about it in the 2.5D and like the side scrolly nature of it, and just the way platforming seems to work, and the level, like the layouts of certain levels. I can imagine my one hang up here is the black and white. I get that it's evocative of, some of those classic samurai movies. And what was the mode that they had in Ghost of Tsushima?
Kurosawa mode or whatever.
Kurosawa mode. Like, that's cool, but it was also, in my opinion, like objectively the inferior way to play Ghost of Tsushima. Like, Ghost of Tsushima is a beautiful game, and I feel like you're kind of robbing yourself of a lot of that experience if you play in Kurosawa mode. And I feel like this game would be a lot more generally appealing if it had an option like that. Because I'm looking at it in the animations, like the waterfalls in the background, you could see it's like, wow, that looks really gorgeous. I wish I could see it in color, but I get that that's the niche they're going for. I'm curious to check it out. I'm excited about it. I could just see that being a little grating after a while.
Definitely. It doesn't look aesthetically pleasing to me. I didn't want to play Ghost of Tsushima in that mode. That's just not doing it for me. Not that I have any love for Japanese cinema or anything like that. But Dustin, are you going to check the Yomi?
I've seen some trailers and it looks interesting, but I think this is one that, depending on reviews, if your reviews are real strong, I'll definitely check it out. But if it's not so good, I don't necessarily feel compelled.
Before we get into what we're playing, James Kinslow III wrote in. I have to ask this question. It is interesting. He says, "Hey, sacred friends, why are mermaids the only fantasy creatures that are seemingly romanticized? You don't see other human-animal hybrid fantasy creatures being romanticized. Who wouldn't want to fuck a centaur, a satyr, or a minotaur? What makes a woman with the lower anatomy of a fish so sexy? Sincerely, a man writing a fantasy romance novel featuring a mermaid." Thank you, James, for writing in. What is it about? That is weird, isn't it? It's so funny because I was thinking about that recently. I'm like, it's a fish. You can't.
Well,
what are you going to do if you get sexual with the mermaid?
There's that famous, that great. It's like one of the early seasons of Family Guy where the merman saves Lois, and it's a fish up top with like the legs of a man.
That's
and
awesome.
It's just like, this is like really, this is not as appealing as
definitely not
as I thought it would be. And it's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, I wouldn't be able to do anything if and it's like, it's a pretty good. That was like early seasons of Family Guy when it was still genuinely like clever and had some heart to it.
I loved Family Guy back in the day. Those first few seasons, before it got canceled.
Great show,
definitely. Okay, Dustin, any input about the sexy mermaid?
To my understanding, when we talk about mermaids and their origins, I don't think the sailors are, they're talking about the pirates or the sailors or whatever that saw the mermaids and were, intrigued or, maybe wanted to engage in some sexual acts. I don't think they knew that they had fish bottom halves. Like, they would go and try to lure the men from the water and from the top up. And so, men, they see what's going on in the upstairs and they're like, oh yeah. And then they would get eaten or whatever. I don't know.
I see. So that makes sense. Okay.
Now, is that mermaids or is that sirens?
Oh, you might.
Or are they both the same thing?
I don't know.
Because I know sirens lured mermaids. I don't remember. I don't know if in the lore of mermaids they lure men. I could be uneducated.
A mermaid. No, go on.
The thing, though, I think that's ultimately we need to point out is that James clearly has a kink that he's trying to justify. He feels the need to justify. That's okay. Like what you like. You don't need to be like, well, why doesn't everyone else want to fuck a centaur? I'm good. I'm personally fine. I don't need to fuck a centaur. But if you want to, and the centaur is cool with that, and everyone is in agreement, go for it.
I don't think I knew The Little Mermaid was a Hans Christian Andersen story.
It's real dark. The
Oh yeah,
actual
it's really
version.
messed up.
Yeah, I don't think maybe
A lot of those
I must
stories
have
are
known
like
that.
Pinocchio gets like lynched or whatever at the end of it's those original Disney movies are based on some of the saddest, most dire things you've ever read in your life. And you just think of the guy who pitched it to Disney, like, hey, you know what would make a good story? This little wooden boy who has his soul trapped in this facade of false humanity and then killed. And then the guy's like, all right, well, maybe we should clean that up a little bit because it's,
or
Disney.
Or how about a child watching its mom bleed out from the head after it's shot?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, classic Bambi.
Thank you for writing in.
Sacred Symbols is brought to you by EveryPlate. EveryPlate is America's best value meal kit. Let's be real, meal kits are really, really convenient, but usually that convenience comes at a high cost. EveryPlate, on the other hand, offers delicious dinners that won't break the bank. Think about it this way. This is a little bit crazy. One meal from EveryPlate is about the same price as 1 cup of coffee. And honestly, with all the crazy pumpkin spice lattes and stuff like that, it may even be cheaper. Being a producer at Last Stand can be quite a busy job with numerous shows coming out every week, plus my streaming on top of that. And so the idea of meal kit convenience has always been really appealing to me when you're trying to quickly make dinner at 8:30 or even 9 sometimes for me. But the price has always been the barrier that's never made me jump in. So EveryPlate's lower price point was a big factor for me. So you know what? Give yourself and your wallet a break. Enjoy delicious, affordable meals delivered to your door and ready to go in just 6 simple steps. Try EveryPlate for just $1.79 per meal by going to everyplate.com and entering code SACRED179. Get started with EveryPlate for just $1.79 per meal by going to everyplate.com and entering code SACRED179.
Let's get into what we're playing. Dustin, let's start with you again. Since we're all playing Ghostwire, we can talk about it further, but you're also playing something else. So let's start with what you are playing on the side.
So I want to be clear about this in that I did not purchase this game, but there is an extensive demo that is the beginning of the game that you can then extend into the full game. And that is Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origins. Played this for about an hour and a half yesterday on stream. Guys, this game, shocking. The beginning, Chris, you in particular, did you play the beginning of this game?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I played through the whole demo.
So you played more than me. I implore everyone in the audience, whether you have interest or not, to just experience the beginning of this game, because I don't know what the fuck they were thinking. What is happening? The game starts where it shows them, they're like invading the castle, the Chaos guys like trying to kill them, whatever. Cutscene ends. Then it goes to the Frank Sinatra clip that we saw from the trailer of Jack walking through the field. Then you get this part where Jack, they show you the tutorial, which is not very good tutorial.
It's a terrible tutorial.
Then it fades to black again. And then we're in another location where they do like little text parts where they explain all this shit that in such a vague way. And then suddenly it's just like, and you're here with your crew and you're going to go out and try and kill Chaos. And then it's just go. It's just go from there, which here's the thing. Maybe the game goes back and explains some of this stuff. Maybe it doesn't. I'm assuming not. But I am so intrigued by this game at this point. The combat is fine. Like it's serviceable and has a lot of really interesting ideas that it can add to the Souls formula-esque, whatever you want to say, the current state of the third person action game. There's stuff like if you pull a successful block, you can like steal an enemy's ability temporarily. And that's kind of neat. They're really generous in its job systems. You can change what job you are basically at any time. To my understanding, there's like a shit ton of them and they really pile them on you all at once. So it's serviceable as far as from a gameplay perspective. Also, the game looks like shit. This game looks like a bad PS4 game. Even honestly, I mean, I saw many of PS4 games, at least from a resolution standpoint. This game looks like it's running at 720p which
Yeah,
on performance, it's shocking.
It feels like a PS3 game that was upscaled to the PS4 very poorly. Because there are scenes where you're talking to people, you're talking to like you have a cutscene where you talk to the king or whatever, and it zooms in on a close up to the king, and the king looks like relatively fine. It's not so bad that it's noticeable, but it's like not all that impressive either. But then you'll see the background; it's like shimmering and like pixelated, and they haven't quite figured out how to do the depth of field that everyone else has figured out. So like it just looks horrific. I love that tutorial that, like when Jack or whatever the fuck this guy's name is, he's like walking in the field and he's listening to My Way. It's like, regrets, I've had a few, and then a little text pop up comes up that says defeat goblin.
Right, yeah.
And it's one of the funniest images I've ever seen. And then like you said, it just cuts to them meeting for the first time. They hold up the rocks to each other and like, you're my friends now, I guess. And it is a very befuddling experience.
Yeah. That's like, Colin, I don't know if it's a game you would like, but I would really encourage you from a pure entertainment standpoint. Play 30, just see how this game starts, because it's just how, like what happened? Like, I don't know. There's debates about how but I don't know
how very funny
how much Nomura was involved in this. I've been joking saying it has that Nomura stink on it.
But Team Ninja made it, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to. I should look up and see exactly what Nomura's direct involvement. I mean, it's got some of that Nomura feeling dialogue, no doubt. It's like Kingdom Hearts on crack.
I think Nomura did everything.
He single-handedly made this game.
This game feels like something that he did everything. Like everything is him. I don't care if that's true or not, because it feels true.
It feels like at points they like the developers are in on the joke. Like there's a part when Jack, and this is very, very early on, Jack is going to fight Chaos, and it does like a Wes Anderson crash zoom onto his face. He goes, Chaos, like that. It's like, are you serious? You purposely did that? It's crazy. I don't know really what I'm going to play more of it, just because I at least want to finish all of the demo, which is apparently like 4 hours long or something like that. But
yeah, it's a long insane demo.
I thought of you, Chris, because the word that I had to describe it at the end of my stream is I was baffled by it. Is a baffling experience. But
it's like playing through Kung Pao almost, where you're like, is this intentionally like this? Like, because so much of it defies what you would, if you were trying to make a cool game, you wouldn't do any of this. Like you're fighting. There's this point in the demo where you go into this cave and there's like a pirate ship and there's this pirate character, and he just looks like Owen Wilson, and it's just a very. He's like a mix between Owen Wilson and Mr. Krabs from Detroit.
Wow,
that character,
guys. Like that.
Yeah, and you're just, and it's just like, what? And his name's Bikey, and you're just like, what is this?
I have to finish this. I have to go further. No,
you should. You should.
So anyway, I recommend everybody. You got to see the beginning of this game, no doubt. Whether you're interested or not, you will be entertained. As far as another game, okay, Ghostwire Tokyo. This is the game we're all playing. I don't want to say too much, because I feel like a lot of the main thoughts I have I want to save for the upcoming spoiler cast. I did finish it, and I didn't just mainline it, though I was kind of starting to consider it at the end. We talked about some of these details last week, and I would feel like I want to emphasize to people that are maybe interested in checking this game out. This game is a collect-a-thon through and through. That is one of the primary aspects of this game. Luckily, you can kind of take it or leave it. You can choose to engage at the level that you want to. A lot of it is, I think we mentioned about going and you collect the spirits of the people that have been turned into ghosts as you go. And so I felt like I was collecting spirits consistently. Anytime I was going somewhere, I'd pick up everyone that I saw. I probably did a third of the side quests, picked up as many spirits as I could. I even went on a few 30-minute long excursions where I'm like, I'm just going to go explore and find spirits. I found maybe 20 to 25% of them during this time. And as I got close to the end of the game, I thought, I like this game. It's got a lot of cool ideas. The combat is interesting, but it has some issues. I do not like it enough to go all out. And so for that reason, I'm just going to finish it. And it's one of those games which, Colin, I'm really curious to hear, since you're playing it a lot more extensively. This game, I could tell, I thought, if I try to platinum or even think about it, I'm going to end up hating this game. I am satiated. I feel good about the amount I've played, and now I am ready to move on. But Colin, you're playing much more extensively, right?
Yes. I am 25 hours in. I'm on chapter 4. I have 78% of the souls right now, or the whatever. And yeah, I really like it. It is a collectathon. It is a open world. That's why I said it reminds me of like Crackdown and stuff. It's just because there are so many things to find. It's not like you're just finding this, that, and the other thing. It's not like a treasure in an Uncharted game or something where there are 2 a chapter. There's fucking shit everywhere. You pulse with the square button, and you can ultimately pulse up to 50 meters all around you when you upgrade. And you just see the blue outline of everything around you that you can grab, that you can interact with. That most of these things are just destructible items that you get ammo from. But I really like Ghostwire Tokyo. I feel like I needed a game like this because, and I'll say most of my thoughts for the spoiler cast too. Maddie's going to be on it, I think. I think we're going to have actually quite a few people on it.
Yeah.
And so I will say that I needed a game like a collectathon. It reminds me of like in 2018 when I was just really into playing Spyro for a few weeks and just was really enjoying playing it. And Ghostwire is similar. I don't really know what's going on in the game, to be perfectly honest. I have to kind of go back and read a little bit more. There's definitely stuff I've missed. And I like the combat, I think, more than you. Like, I think the combat's really clever and interesting, although I'm not using certain aspects of the combat at all. And the game very rarely puts you in danger. I think I've died 3 times in 25 hours, which is great. I'm not looking for a game to beat the shit out of me, but it's exactly that I think I like about this. I was so engaged in Horizon for 70 hours with my headphones on and all that. I was engaged with Elden Ring for the 20 hours I played it. I needed something where I was like, I'm going to pop in, I'm going to listen to it on the TV. I'm going to pop in one of my AirPods and listen to a podcast while I'm playing this game. And then I'll stop it if something happens where I need to listen more carefully. And so I'm enjoying just playing it like that. And I'm going to get the platinum. I've come this far. And, I don't know. It like I said, it reminds me of Freedom Wars, the Vita game, and just there's something about seeing a massive number, not a small number, but a massive number. And in this game, it's 240,300, I think. And watching that number just whittle down slowly, very similar to the prison sentence in Freedom Wars, which is 1 million years or something, like I said, insane. And it seems like an unfathomable, like, what are you going to do? And it reminds me of the old Dead Rising achievements and trophies to kill like 55,000 zombies, and it's like, how are you going to do that? But if you just play the game not organically, like I'm playing it much more thoroughly than even organically, but if you just take the time to gather things and collect things around you and pay attention, you can pray at altars that show you things on your map. I do that constantly.
Yeah.
The one thing that's annoying are the relics. There are a shit ton of what are called relics, and you sell them to these cat creatures. It's very cute. By the way, shout out to the cats and the dogs in the game. Just absolutely love the cats and the dogs.
So good, dude.
The dog models are amazing. Actually, some of the most impressive dog models I've ever seen. Not when you're just seeing them, but when you're petting them and interacting, the way they react to you. If you know dogs, you'll be like, wow, this is quite on par. And I got to give a shout out to the game. It reminds me a little bit of the Avalanche game from 2015, Mad Max, which fans of mine from back then will know that I was like a big advocate of that game. And it annoyed the shit out of people. And the reason that I liked it was because I felt like it was empty for a reason. Everyone was like, there's nothing to do. The game's empty. I'm like, it's fucking Mad Max. It's supposed to be desolate. It's supposed to be destroyed. They have no water. They have nothing. And it felt like it worked. And in Tokyo, in Ghostwire Tokyo, the city's empty. There's no one except for ghosts and enemies. And part of you wants to see Shibuya alive and bustling. It's a crazy place. I've been there, right? But part of it, the charm of the game, is how empty and sad it is. And Ghostwire is I think, underrated and underappreciated. I don't think the game is going to end up having sold very well or done very well critically, but I think that there's something interesting here. I think this game is much more interesting to me than Deathloop. And I know they're really not comparable apart from their publisher, but they're comparable in that they're both these kind of Bethesda PS5 timed exclusives. I think this is the more interesting one. And
Yeah.
I'm surprised by that. I really didn't know what I was going to get going into it. It's really good. I like it a lot. Chris, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I feel largely similar to you, where it took me by surprise. I didn't look at many trailers leading up to it. We saw the first trailer obviously like years ago, when it was first announced, and I was vaguely interested, but then as it, I don't know, especially after Deathloop, I was like, you know what, I'll play it when it comes out and maybe I'll like it, and because I just didn't care about Deathloop, and I was actually looking forward to Deathloop quite a bit because I just thought the presentation and the style of it was really cool, and it just sort of was not what I wanted, especially as somebody who's genuinely vibed with Arcane for quite some time. I really enjoyed Dishonored, and while I didn't jive with Prey as much the first time, I still enjoyed it. So this was a surprise to me, especially having very, very little experience with Tango. Like, I did not play Evil Within and Evil Within 2. Like, those skated right by me. So this is really my first foray into this studio for all intents and purposes, really. And it's enjoyable. It's fun. Like I said, it's like I said last week, this is an FPS only by a really strict definition. It's not fast and frenetic. It's not Doom. It's not a sandbox physics heavy playground where you're going to be pulling off shit that you're going to want to share clips of it on Twitter. You're not going to see like some crazy physics thing that could only happen to you. And it's not like that kind of experience. It's more led and it's more linear in its exploration in that way, where not a lot of crazy is going to happen, but the crazy things that do happen are designed and they're really fun to engage with. Like I said last time, just the particularly the animations I'm really impressed by. I mean, you brought up the cats and dogs, which I also think are like really solid, but just the way it feels to do magic just feels really satisfying. I don't know how many hours in, but I know I'm definitely over 10 hours, and I know I'm in chapter 4, probably towards the end. And it has not gotten old. It is still consistently really satisfying to use this magic, especially when you learn what each of them do. You learn that the fire kind of has this splash damage effect that knocks people down. Your wind is your base damage type, and water kind of takes out enemy umbrella shields. And when you learn that kind of rock paper scissors type combat, there is a groove there that's really satisfying, even if it's not particularly challenging. Were you gonna say something?
Well, I was just gonna add, it's funny because you said that it's not like Doom, but
No.
what's ironic about it is that there is a element of it that feels like Doom to me, where it's like you want to weaken enemies just enough, and then you can use the ghost wire in order to get in order to take him out. And it's really fun. One of the most satisfying things that I found about the combat was it's like you want to try to weaken as many enemies as you can to just enough where you can take their core out, and then you can like combo like 3 or 4 at a time. And so it's not like Doom, but it reminded me of Doom in a few instances like that. And it also like the rock, paper, scissors elements that you're talking about right now. It's interesting that it kind of borrows some of those game philosophies or mechanics, but not directly, right?
Yeah. Because it is definitely evocative of the glory kill.
Right.
Just the satisfying way that you can like finish off an enemy, especially from a distance when you see the tethers. Like, it's really satisfying, even though it's not like unique to you. There's a lot of sandbox games that GTA is one of these where like the craziest things that are going to happen in that game are typically things that you're probably not going to experience yourself, or things that you've seen online of like that dude flying the plane into the building, that he falls out and then he stands up immediately and then he goes, David. That classic, like, it's just like, that's chaos, but you're never going to experience that. It's just possible in the sandbox. This isn't one of those games. It's very much what you see is what you get, but what you get is very polished and very enjoyable and very fun. I really like the story so far because it's got that shonen jump kind of camp to it, where like, like a character will look down at his hand and it'll be like, shh, like, it's just like, it's got anime tropes that normally I would be annoyed by, but I think, again, just the style of it being contemporarily shown and not in that style does a lot for me. I like these characters a lot. They're growing on me quite a bit. And it's really solid. I'm further in than I was last time, and I'm not tired of it, which is more than I can say for a lot of games that I've touched in the last year or so. Maybe not so much in the last 2 months, because the last 2 months have been pretty solid.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's really solid. I think I would recommend this to a lot of people. At the very least, I would recommend that if you're vaguely interested in this, watch like the first hour of gameplay, because I do think it gets you going into the swing of things pretty quickly. And if what you see is interesting, you've got that waiting for you, in a broader context. One thing I will say though, I brought it up last time. They did it again to me, where they took my powers away, and I had to use the bow. And it's just the worst parts of the game, like objectively, I think. Like,
I
because
absolutely
it's just
agree.
because
It's so
all
annoying.
of the beautiful animation work that goes into the spells, all of the satisfying knockback that you get from the DualSense when you use that magic, all of the style just goes away entirely, and you're just left with this really dull bow that doesn't feel impactful when you use it, that doesn't feel like it should even belong in it. It feels like they needed a bow because they thought hands weren't enough or something, so they were just like, let's take the powers away from you for a little bit, several times. And it's like,
yeah, it seems like they're trying to slow the game
getting
down a little bit or something.
Yeah, but it's like it doesn't need it, and it starts to feel a little tropey. And without that magic, the combat falls apart because it's the crutch of the combat. So it just becomes immediately unfun when that happens. Luckily, those spots are really short. It's a really well-paced game. I'm gonna say that. It's like extraordinarily well-paced.
I agree. Yeah, it is.
Because
you unlock like these different Torii gates, and then it unlocks new parts of the city, and then it gives you all these new things to do, and so on and so forth. And you kind of eat it like that, which is cool.
Yeah, and the different areas of Shibuya are like they get different enough that they start to feel like you're actually like progressing through a large quantity of space, even though it's like actually not. Like when you get to the foresty area, the big park, like that felt like really, really fun and rewarding. And those moments where you don't have your magic don't last too long. So if you get to that point and you're not feeling it, push through. You've got like maybe 5 to 10 minutes max of that before you're back into the swing of things. But that's the weakest point of the game for me, in my opinion.
I don't want to let you guys off the hook from something we should have talked about last week, but didn't. People wrote in about this. I even wrote down a note for myself. Nixter wrote in though, said, last episode, Colin brought up the stream that his sons both did while trying out the new co-op mode for Returnal. However, their thoughts on the game were never brought up in the what we were playing section. So Dustin and Chris, how did you like the new co-op mode in Returnal? Will you be going back to it down the road? I did. We forgot to bring up this Returnal co-op discussion. Boys, what did you think? You played with each other. Dustin, I guess we'll start with you. How did you guys like it?
Played with each other.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So I don't know, Chris, do you want to go? I think our thoughts are pretty similar.
Yeah, so I came back to it. We obviously played. We played, I think, for about 3 hours. We were getting our ass handed to us because we were not practiced.
We also wouldn't shut the fuck up. We were just having a good time hanging out.
Good.
Yeah, we were just talking and chatting. But the thing I will say, it's like it is still fun. It is satisfying. I remember why I liked it when I first played it. On my end, I don't know how things were on your end, but on my end, you were flashing all over the place.
Oh,
like from a connection state, like you were not consistently. It didn't feel like the most consistent co-op that I've ever played. You felt like you were like jutting around. Fortunately, it didn't affect me, which was like which is always like a way more preferable means of co-op. Like if my co-op partner's jittering around, but I'm moving around fine and I'm not getting hit with random lag spikes, totally okay. But I did notice that. I enjoyed it. I had fun, but for whatever reason, it didn't click with me as much. And maybe that's because we were distracted, just talking to each other, just having random conversations, so we weren't really like as focused on the game as we should have been. But I thought it was fine. It's more Returnal, and it's a new way for you to experience it. I do wonder if it kind of makes it harder though, because we were fighting some bosses that I remember taking a lot fewer hits.
Right.
And I don't know. Like, do you feel similarly?
Well, I think the main thing that stood out to me is that this co-op, while it does make some things easier, it doesn't fix the core issues that I had with Returnal, which is the level of RNG. It's like, man, I've gotten like 8 lobbers in a row, which I understand. Don't leave a comment about how the lobber is actually good. I don't care. It's not good when I use
A
it.
lobber is my favorite weapon, but I won't beat you down with it. Yeah. When I figured out how to use the lobber, the game became exponentially easier for me personally.
I've tried. I
get
have.
it. I'm not judging you. I get it.
Yeah. So it's still very RNG heavy. And the other thing that Chris and I, and maybe we're just dumb, I don't know, but we were consistently like, okay, this item we can both pick up. It's like instanced in both of our games. But other items like health, you need to strategize. And so that was one thing that came up a few times. I was like, wait, I can pick this up as well? Or do we need to try to? And it's frustrating too when you have weapons and like a weapon that you both want. And it's like, okay, well, and maybe that's fun in some aspects that you really do have to be cooperative and plan out gear and health and stuff like that. But overall, it felt like, specifically, I think, Chris, what you're talking about with the boss was, it seemed like the way that they retuned it was they just thought, well, there's now 2 people shooting at the boss, so let's double the health, which I don't know. Again, maybe it was a thing where we weren't playing so well and so our weapons weren't upgraded, but man, the bosses felt way more spongy in our playthrough, no doubt.
The claim is that doesn't happen though, right? The claim is that it was supposed to literally make it easier by keeping the game the same, right? That's at least what they said.
Yeah, I mean, it might be true. All I can say, it's been a while since I've played Returnal anyway.
Me
so
too.
Like, yeah. it could be like a fault in our memory, but it's worth noting that when we both played it, we both felt like it was way spongier.
Certainly, that is certainly
even
notable.
If that's not true. It felt that way,
Yeah.
And I'll also just echo the fact that the whole the method by which the game displays what is and is not exclusively yours is very. I mean, you can tell that co-op was not necessarily the intended focus of the design, because it's not particularly communicated well, the things that you share and the things that can be stolen. Because there were points where we were both like really low on health, and we were just like, okay, so you got to pick that up. We got to go kill some things, and then maybe we can both buy a health thing at that store front.
It's just like giving me agita just hearing about it, because it brings me back to that feeling of playing Returnal.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, it's like the health pickups in the world, those are instanced or not instanced, so those are shared. So like if you pick up the health, then I can't get it. So I've got to like kill some enemies and then save up those little oblites or whatever the hell, and then go to that store area and buy a thing. But then I think we both have different stores, because I think you had a Moon Man and then I didn't. So like there's an RNG in the store also,
right?
So like, or at least from what I remember, it's been like 2 or 3 weeks since we've played this. But yeah, it was interesting. It was I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, really. We only put 3 hours into it, and it was kind of a janky co-op session from my perspective. So maybe maybe I'll jump onto it again, but I don't know. There's so much to play right now that like my goal with Returnal was just to kind of jump into it and see how this fared. I still haven't done the tower mode though, which I am curious about, and I have it installed, so I might as well give that a shot at some point soon. Probably when I finish Ghostwire, just a little palate cleanser. But yeah.
Do you have anything you want to add, Dustin?
No. I'm also intrigued by the arcade mode. I tried it one time just to try to get the rust off before we started streaming, but it seems cool.
Right on. A couple more things I want to read about another game that we haven't played yet, but will, or at least I will. RK128 wrote in and said, "Hey, Sacred Crew, I'm sure this will be on the show, but did any of you try the latest Lego Star Wars? Colin has stated in prior episodes he was interested, and after seeing it in action, I don't blame him. It legitimately looks like a major step up from Lego games prior, with its combat systems, open world, and more. Looking forward to your thoughts on the game, and keep at it with the great content. Thank you, RK. Yeah, the game is getting amazing reviews, and seems like it's maybe the best Lego game ever, according to some people. Not a huge surprise, of course. I haven't played it yet. I bought it, downloaded it, actually pre-ordered it a couple days before it was available, so it downloaded automatically, which was nice on my PS5. And now the only thing I have to think about, I'll be done with Ghostwire probably in the next 2 days, I would assume. And so Derek Hoffman wrote in with the only other thing I have to think about here, which is, hey, CDC, I was watching a streamer start the Skywalker saga, and they asked chat which episode they should start with. So what episodes did you guys start with? I personally am going to play them in the order I initially saw them in. 6, 3, 2, 1, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. I know you can't actually do this. I just like sharing this strange fact about me. Thanks, boys, and keep being awesome. That is some order. That would be Return of the Jedi into Revenge, into Attack, into Phantom Menace, and then into the original. I don't know what you were doing there. There's only 2 answers to this, I think. There's only 2 possible real answers. And it's so funny you brought this up, Derek, because I was discussing this with Dagan, which was, you either play them in order 1, 2, 3 and on, or you go 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, the order that they were released. But I don't know what I'm going to do. Dustin, are you going to play this game? And if so, do you have an interest in starting them at a specific position?
I want to play this game, but I have never. I've tried many a Lego game, but never had them hook me. I don't know what it is exactly. I saw some gameplay of this, and I gotta say, some of the jokes or whatever, the way that they add like the Lego charm to this game, very, very cute. In fact, like I was expecting to kind of like roll my eyes when I was watching some of the gameplay, but then it legitimately made me laugh, some of the stuff. So I really do want to check this out. I personally, if I was to pick up this game, I would start at 1 and then end, go 1 through 9, just like that. But apparently, I was looking because I thought I heard this somewhere. You can start any trilogy.
Right, 1, 4, and 7, I think, is technically where you can start.
But you have to unlock the following episodes.
Yeah, I think I'll do it in order, in continuity order. Just, I don't know, man. I've been in this Star Wars mood. I think maybe in anticipation of this game, and I don't know, Chris, if you have anything to add, but I've just been in the Star Wars mood, and I've been watching a lot of Red Letter Media, who I love those guys. I mean, those guys are just absolute geniuses. They're so funny. They're so good. They're absolutely amazing. Make me laugh. And watching their thoughtful Star Wars commentary, even if I don't really agree with some of it, like they didn't really like Solo, for instance. I think Solo is an awesome movie. It's still cool to like hear people passionate and kind of see yourself reflected on the screen as far as like the disenchanted sad man, and this game seems to really, and when I'm reading about it, I've avoided all content as far as like reading reviews and seeing footage, but what I'm understanding is that it's just chock full of love, and I need that. And I'm excited to see even the movies I didn't like. Like I don't like 8 and 9. I don't really particularly like the prequels. Although I think the prequels look much better in light of what Disney has done to Star Wars. There's going to be something in each of those, especially 4, 5, and 6, that I'm going to just fall in love with, and all the little odes and characters, and it brings me back. And it's funny because when I moved into this house a couple of years ago, my dad dropped off everything I ever owned that was at his house and put it in my garage because he couldn't wait to just get rid of my shit. I don't blame him. It's just been sitting there. And I was just in the garage yesterday going through my Star Wars toys. I went to Lowe's and got like a bunch of bins and have just been going through my Star Wars toys and putting them away properly, where they'll probably be forever until I die. And then someone just takes them out of my house and throws them in a dumpster in the year 2080. But in the meantime, I've just been in that Star Wars space. So Chris, are you going to check this game out? Are you interested?
I don't know. This game feels like I didn't have a lot of history with Lego games growing up. I did not have a ton of history with Star Wars growing up, so feels poser. It feels like a poser thing to jump in and be like, "Oh man, yeah." Although it is technically like it would be the whole series, so I guess it would be so bad. But if I were to play this game, I'd probably I would buy it now and then probably wait for like a really quiet period where there's not much to play, and then maybe play through it that way, because I don't know. I did see some clips going around on Twitter that were like some of the charm of it. Like there was I think it was Mace Windu going like a Sith Lord, and like there's something like really, it is charming, and maybe that's something that I didn't really see when I was like a little kid who was just kind of I just saw it as a baby game. I want to play shooters because that's badass. But I don't know. I feel like my experience with both of these franchises is so limited. I mean, Lego outside of literal Legos, I have like no video game Lego experience.
I appreciate that answer. That's a Colin answer.
Yeah.
Which is like I don't want to be a poser even to myself.
Yeah, maybe I'll play it because I do like Star Wars in some vague way. Maybe I'd even like it more in Lego, honestly. But
Maybe
I'll wait till I have some free time.
There's something very appealing about Legos. There's no doubt.
Colin.
Yeah.
Have you mentioned Red Letter Media? I have to bring this up. Have you seen the Nerd Crew, the series that they've done called the Nerd Crew?
No.
I will send you a link because you're gonna love it. And the audience, you should definitely check out their Nerd Crew series because if you choose our content over other people's, I think you will enjoy it.
Cool.
I'll leave it at that.
They're great. They've been on this Raimi kick lately because they just did Darkman. I was so happy to see that because I loved Darkman as a kid.
Dude, my dream is that we would collaborate with them someday. But they're funny because they're big. I mean, millions of hits on YouTube, but huge. The Patreon numbers.
We're bigger on Patreon.
They're not focused on Patreon. But,
no, not at all. I mean, they do that all passively. I don't think I've ever even heard them mention it in any of the content that I've watched. So they're just doing that.
I didn't even know they had a Patreon until just now.
And they're like right below us. They're awesome. They're funny. They're honest, and I like it. Yeah, I like them a lot. I'm jealous of them in a little bit. Like they're when you find every so often you find a creator. I see a lot of creators out there. I'm like, whatever. And then you find a creator, and you're like, damn, you're so good. You're so good at this. And I've really been inspired. Dagan and I have, first of all, Dagan's a massive Red Letter Media fan going way back, and not a huge surprise. And we've been talking about like, how can we make knockback? How can we do a knockback product that's more like, half in the bag or something? And that would be so funny, to try to do something like that. And I was thinking to him, I'm talking like sitting down and playing a game together, but not a let's play, but more of like an analysis of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Got to do something with knockback. It's fun. Okay. Let's get into the news, boys. Some big items here to get into, but we'll start at the top. Number one. Publisher Square Enix and its fully owned studio Crystal Dynamics have officially confirmed the existence of a new Tomb Raider game. Information is scarce, but there are a few key details worth relaying for this early in development title. Perhaps the biggest tidbit is that the game will run on Epic's Unreal Engine 5, a big change for Tomb Raider, which was previously built on Crystal Dynamics' proprietary engine Foundation. Foundation has been used on all Crystal Dynamics games going back to the 2003 Tomb Raider reboot on PS3 and later PS4, and was most recently used for the studio's ill-received Marvel Avengers game. Many studios are making the decision to abandon proprietary engines recently, including Sony itself, which is clearly deprioritizing the use of its own tech at its various teams' discretion. The game hasn't been confirmed for any platforms, though it's believed to be a current-gen only title, and it's unclear which continuity the game will exist in, as there are 12 core Tomb Raider games going back to 1996 that exist within multiple universes. The most recent Tomb Raider game was 2018's Shadow of the Tomb Raider on PS4, developed by Crystal Dynamics' sister studio, Eidos Montreal. The last Crystal-led Tomb Raider game was 2015's Rise of the Tomb Raider, also on PS4. Other than Tomb Raider and continuing support for the aforementioned Avengers, Crystal Dynamics is also acting in a second-party capacity with Xbox, developing the Perfect Dark reboot on their behalf. Tomb Raider's original studio, Core Design, went defunct more than a decade ago. Their last game was the 2005 PSP launch window offering Smart Bomb, which some of you might remember as well. Not much to go on here, but Chris, we'll start with you. New Tomb Raider, Unreal 5, Crystal Dynamics going back to the well. I'm pleased to hear this because it wasn't clear that they were going to have the room to do this, because Perfect Dark is probably going to take much of their resources. And then, of course, they still are supporting the Avengers for some reason as well. So Tomb Raider's continuing. It's not continuing elsewhere. The last Tomb Raider game, again, was not made by Crystal, so this is a change. What do you think? I mean, we don't know much, but are you looking forward to this one?
Yeah, I have a soft spot in my heart for Tomb Raider, and I don't know. Like I played through that entire reboot trilogy from Crystal, and obviously, what was the other studio that made the Shadow?
Eidos Montreal.
Eidos. I played through all of those, and I always came away from them feeling pretty positively, if only just for just brief brief moments of really missed potential. Like I had a big thing with the last one where it's like they had a really great character moment in Shadow of the Tomb Raider that they just completely walked back like 10 minutes after it happened. And I was just like, so close. It's just so close to being like one of my favorite games probably ever because that would have been such a satisfying narrative moment. And then it's just gone. And now it's just back to being a third person action adventure game that's pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, but I've always enjoyed Tomb Raider. I'm looking forward to seeing. I thought the art they used was really striking, really, really evocative of classic. That cerulean blue top and it's just like there's something about that imagery. It's just like really just it's nostalgic to me. It makes me excited. Obviously, it's very well early on. This is probably years away if I were to guess.
Oh yeah, this is early in development.
Yeah,
I would say 2025 maybe.
So I mean, I'm optimistic only because I have not apparently learned my lesson yet. But I think Tomb Raider is one of those series that should be a consistent mainstay. I just think it has a lot to offer, and the way that it's shaped modern game design, especially, I think is insane.
Uncharted,
like you can trace a lot of modern game design to the original Tomb Raiders.
I agree. Yeah, I got Tomb Raider 3, I remember, for Christmas in 1997. And that was the first Tomb Raider I got. And I was like, yeah, I've never played anything like this. And you know what I liked about the reboot, Dustin? I like the rebooted games. I beat the second and third ones. I don't think I beat the first one. But what I really liked about it was there was obviously some sort of problem with Lara Croft, right? Like she can be whatever she wants, I guess, but she can't be this big-titted, ridiculous, it was ridiculous, right? And
yeah,
but what they did, I thought was nice, which is that Lara Croft is still super sexy. In fact, she's probably sexier than ever in these new games. But what they did was they put clothes on her and they gave her she's always been smart and stuff, but they really gave her agency and a brain and put her in real mortal danger. And they did some weird shit where they still played up her femininity, like where she would die and it would be like this gratuitous death scene and all this.
Yeah,
and
that was a little
Some
weird.
people had problems with that. Like I've played many Tomb Raider games. I haven't played them all, but I played Legends and some random shit like that in that really bad interstitial period. And then you go on to these new Tomb Raider games. I'm amped to see more, and I'm glad that Crystal is going back because I think they did a really good job. Although I think Eidos Montreal did fine too. So what do you make? Yeah. What do you make of this, Dustin?
Yeah, I think it's cool. I'm curious whether I feel like it hasn't been quite enough time to reboot it again. And like you're saying, I really like this new, I guess it's not really new at this point, the current version of her. So I wouldn't want to necessarily see them reboot it again. But the interesting aspect of this story is that it's being built in Unreal Engine 5. And we've seen similar stories pop up over the past couple of weeks where developers are moving games to Unreal Engine. We just talked about CD Projekt moving The Witcher over. And it's interesting. I don't know enough about game development and particularly Unreal Engine 5. And it would be really cool to learn specifically developers who are hands-on with the tool set. But it's clear that there's something special going on with Unreal and what we've seen, that Matrix demo, seeing developers move over from proprietary stuff to this. It seems like there's a lot of potential. And I don't know, in some ways it's kind of scary because you don't necessarily want this, not that it's anywhere near a monopoly at this point with Epic, but you don't necessarily want there to just be one tool set to make AAA games or even indie games. Tons of smaller games are also made in Unreal. But at the same time, when we're talking about a landscape that games are becoming more and more expensive and taking more and more time, the thought of a tool that can drastically reduce that time and still put out high quality or even higher quality games, that's an intriguing concept. And maybe that's part of why we're seeing this shift over. It's yet to be seen. I'm curious what the first major AAA game on Unreal 5 that will be released, but I'm very, very interested to see how this shakes out.
Before I even say any more, let's just get Ilya Starvarov Staroverov, I'm sorry, on here. He or she wrote in and said, "Hey CDC, our proprietary engine's on the way out." To Dustin's question, in the span of a week, we have seen big developers like CD Projekt Red and Crystal Dynamics announce that their next projects will be using Unreal Engine 5. Digital Foundry talks about games growing in complexity, and with that, the engineering task to maintaining the tech becomes exponentially more costly, while simultaneously inadequate compared to what Epic provides. There's also the issue of new hires you guys brought up last week. Do you think Sony should stay the course with multiple engines, muscle up ICE for a real common engine, or something else entirely? Thanks for making my boring office job more bearable with all the great LSM content. Thank you, Elliot, for writing in. Now, ICE, Elliot mentions ICE. ICE is, for PlayStation nerds will know this, but ICE is Initiative for the Common Engine. And this is a thing that Sony had started running in the PS2 era out of Naughty Dog, actually. And I think they're still there. And the idea was to try to get an engine. Now, Sony has engines, internal engines, including most notably Decima, but there are others as well. And the idea, so to kind of put this out there, the reason that you want to do this is to just cut the middleman. By making everything proprietary, you just make more money. You don't have to license not only the engine, but then the middleware. When you start up a game, what do you see? You see the same logos for like a lot of things. If you pay attention, you see, Havoc or some over and over again, just a whole splash screen of them. And each one of those represents money. In fact, they're all on that splash screen because part of the agreement to use that is that it's going to be on that splash screen and it's going to be promoted that way. So you can understand why developers and publishers wanted to get away with this. Not so much developers, but publishers. They wanted something of their own. Just get rid of all of this shit. But to Dustin's point and to the letter's point, it's just becoming too complex. And I think what people are realizing is that at these different entities is that, listen, we chasing after the engine, after engines was a good idea at one time, but we're taking too long. The games are becoming too expensive and we're paying too much for all of these tools while we can just use Epic. And what's good about Epic is they actually have a really interesting deal. Their deal used to be 5% of gross revenue, but in fact, it's better than that now. There's no licensing fee until $1 million is grossed on a game. Now, that's nothing for a big AAA game, but I mean, if one of our games has been $1 million, we fucking shit ourselves, right? So that's an interesting deal that gets people into the door and they start learning to use these tools. And then as they get jobs at other studios, then they know how to use Unreal. And that's just more practical. It's totally that as well. Like, how useful is your knowledge of Crytek right now? Or CryEngine, rather. Like, how useful is your knowledge of Foundation at Crystal Dynamics? There is a lot to go into it. And so I think it's no coincidence. And by the way, if you're into one of those, if you're a bean counting Sony fan, which I know some of you are, Sony makes money on every single game that uses Unreal Engine, a little bit, because they own a small piece of Epic. So they might have special publishing deals too, where their first party and second party games might just have a free and clear deal for all we know because of their connection with PlayStation. So it might be the same thing as using Decima, except you have more plugins, you have more middleware. Unreal Engine and engines work with a bunch of plugins. Like, it's just plug and play sort of things. You can have, it could be something as small as like a font, something as large as a physics engine, right? Or a physics software and middleware and all that. So Epic just works well with that. You can go read about it if you guys want. It's interesting, but Unreal Engine 5, we don't know what the first one will be yet. And in the meantime, Unreal Engine 4.x is doing work. I mean, it's still plenty of games coming out on it.
Yeah.
But Chris, this next one, I couldn't help but think of you about. Number 2.
Yeah.
In a surprise but very welcome announcement, European developer Remedy announced that it's remaking its second and third games ever, Max Payne and Max Payne 2, The Fall of Max Payne. This is substantial because the sequel in particular was published by Rockstar, and this new agreement is in conjunction with Rockstar, which will act as publisher. Now, the story behind Rockstar's involvement in Max Payne is a little more nebulous and confusing, but basically, Take-Two once owned a short-lived publisher you may remember called The Gathering of Developers. This publisher was mostly involved with PC stuff. They helped release games in series like Jazz Jackrabbit, which was Cliffy B's game back in the day, Railroad Tycoon, and others. And they worked on some PlayStation 2 stuff too, including the original Mafia, which was made by 2K Czech. Anyway, that label published the original game, and then Take-Two shuttered them. Take-Two also owned and still owns Rockstar, where Game 2 segued over to, and Remedy launched a sequel. The first 2 games came to PS2 in 2001 and 2003, respectively. Since then, Remedy obviously went in a different direction. They long worked on 2010's Alan Wake, which finally came to PS4 last year, a downloadable sequel in 2012, and then the Xbox exclusive Quantum Break in 2016. In 2019, they followed up with the 505 published Control, and most recently, the team released Crossfire X with Smilegate, which was badly received on Xbox and PC. Although I think they did the single player stuff, which is actually better received. So to be fair. Now, the studio is working on 5 games with 4 publishers. A sequel to Alan Wake coming to PS5 via Epic. A sequel to Control coming to PS5 via 505. Another PS5 game with 505 codenamed Condor. A mysterious Tencent funded title known as Vanguard. And finally, this Max Payne project. The Max Payne remake and its remade sequel will be released as one package, according to Remedy, and will be current gen only, available on PlayStation 5 at an unknown point in time. However, don't expect it anytime soon. According to the press release, quote unquote, this project is currently in the concept development stage. No idea what you would announce it now. Rockstar like always keeps everything close to their chest, and then they're going to talk about this game. It's very strange.
Yeah.
Before I even get into anything, Chris, what do you think about this? I was going to read the next question, but actually there's much more for us to get into. What do you think about Max Payne and Max Payne 2 coming back?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I like this. I enjoyed Max Payne and Max Payne 2 quite a bit. I played it on PC originally, which like way after it came out. Like this is like way later, and I really enjoyed it. I dug the comic panel style like storytelling and Sam Lake's hilarious face like plastered on this guy. I was like, but I think but there's I don't know. There's something about the campiness of those original games. There's like a camp to it. It's not like rainy camp or nothing. It's not like insane, but there is an element of there's some comedy there in seeing just Sam Lake's face delivering all these brooding lines. I don't think it was intended that way, but I think it is what ended up being a big part of that charm. So to imagine like a next gen or like I guess a current gen exclusive to this current gen remake of the original title's intent being like very, very serious and very dire, I do wonder whether or not some of that initial feeling is going to be lost, because that does happen a lot in reboots and remakes, and sometimes the art direction misses and sometimes the atmosphere misses. I mean, you saw a lot of people talking about even just the way people are very finicky about that. That most recently that happened with the early development diary for Dead Space remake, when people were like, that lighting's all wrong, even though it looked amazing.
Right.
So it's one of those things where
that game's gonna be so. Stop with the Dead Space complaints. Are you kidding? Anyway, go on.
it is crazy, but I get it, because I get it on some degree, because there is something special about the way these original games are as they are, and remakes are scary, and especially with a studio like Remedy, who typically, in my view, always deliver. I haven't played Crossfire X because I have no interest in it.
It kind of came and went,
but it kind of came and went. Nobody cares. But for the most part, whenever they're working on something, it's usually a hit. I'm really excited about the sequel to Alan Wake. I'm very excited about Control. Obviously, I know what happens in Max Payne and Max Payne 2, so I'm not over the moon about it. But I am looking forward to seeing these games treated properly and given some TLC and love and care. I just wonder whether or not Remedy is just juggling too much right now. That's my main concern, because I want each of these things to be very, very good, and I don't know if that's possible if you have so much going on at once. Like I don't want Control 2 to suffer because they're also making Alan Wake 2 at the same time. And as we've talked about on the show, probably ad nauseum, resources come at a cost.
Every choice it comes at a deficit of something else that could have been done.
Right. So,
well, let's get into this. I want to get into this
optimistic.
from Joseph. You bring it up, and it's a good one. Joseph wrote into us on Patreon and said, "Hey, gents, Remedy just announced that they have agreed with Rockstar Games to remake the first 2 Max Payne games. As a fan of the franchise, this is exciting news on paper. Remedy has matured as a developer over the years, and I would love to see what they can achieve with their new tech. My question is, do you think Remedy is silently taking on too many projects? My current count is Alan Wake 2, a sequel to Control, 2 new IPs titled Vanguard and Condor, and now the Max Payne remakes. At no other point in their history have they taken on more than one project at a time. I can't help to think how poorly received Crossfire X was, and if that had anything to do with Remedy's workload. I will reiterate that they didn't make the poorly received part of the game, but they are kind of getting dragged into that, and that's their own problem and their own fault. I am concerned about this, but here is why I am not necessarily concerned about it. And Dustin, will go over to you for this to see what you think. Is they have these 5 games in development, but they are working with different publishers. They are not self-publishing any of these games. So they have different entities keeping them honest. It's not like either themselves, like a CD Projekt type thing where it's just going to melt down, or a situation where they have one publisher and they're kind of the golden goose, so they're going to get away with a bunch of shit. They have different deals with different publishers, and they have different expectations with these different publishers that need to be met. And I don't think 505 Games is going to give a flying fuck about what their excuses are with Alan Wake 2 if these games aren't up to snuff, and so on and so forth. So I feel like Remedy is biting off a lot. It's concerning, especially because, as I noted, Alan Wake took them like 7 years to make. So now it's not like they have a culture of quick work. So Dustin, what do you make of this? I feel like maybe the multiple publishers being involved will help keep them honest and on track. And I think that that's maybe the silver lining. The other silver lining, of course, is that we're going to get a bunch of Remedy games, which is great.
Colin, I'll put it this way. I got to save you from the comments because Remedy, to my understanding, made that story mode, which is one of the major problems.
I thought it was the online mode was the problem, and that
Well, both of them are
not. Save me from it. But I thought it was that the free to play shooter mode was bad, and then that wasn't even on the stuff Remedy made wasn't even on Game Pass, and that was the problem with it. I'm confused by it, but anyway, sorry.
The single player portion of Crossfire X, because there's apparently two, one of them made by Remedy, another one in house or something. It's a very confusing situation, but Remedy's contribution was not particularly great.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
You know,
but
it was. I just searched it real quick, and there's like Remedy's biggest blunder, Crossfire X. So.
It just seemed like they were getting blamed for someone else's game, but I take that. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So it is a big concern.
I guess they did build it off of whatever was there, I guess, but like, you know, ultimately they still put out something that they probably knew wasn't good. It's probably like, we're contractually obligated to make a single player portion for this game that nobody in the West cares about at all.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I am highly concerned about how many games they have cooking right now, just because, and I know that studios change year by year, but just think about, this is the studio that had such a hard time getting Alan Wake out the door, and then their game after that was a little bit mixed, right, with
American Nightmare,
the Xbox exclusive game that they did, which the name is
Quantum Break.
Quantum Break.
Oh,
right,
I thought you were talking about American Nightmare. Okay, so yeah, Quantum Break, right?
Yeah, Quantum Break, which is, it's not bad. It was fine enough, but I don't know. It reminds me of that era of Platinum where they were just doing all kinds of shit, and then all of them came out and they were not good. It just, I wonder if this is a situation where, whose idea was this? Did Rockstar say, "Hey, we want to remake these. If you don't want to do it, then we're going to have someone else do it." And they felt like, okay, well, we got to make this work, something like that. It just seems like so, and these are games that are going to have such high expectations. Think about Alan Wake 2, the follow-up to this game that many people revere as their greatest game. The expectations are going to be so high. And I mean, same case with Max Payne. You saw the excitement, at least on Twitter yesterday, of people that were so thrilled, and myself included. I've not played Max Payne 2, but the first one I have really fond memories playing. And so I can't help but be extremely skeptical. And maybe some of these projects, like you talk about the 505, the unnamed stuff, maybe that's like real far future stuff that they're just late. Maybe they've got a very small team that are, you know, getting the groundwork way pre-production stuff. And maybe that's the case. Maybe that's the hopeful glass half full. But seeing all this at once is nothing but a red flag for me.
Do you agree, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned about it. I think it's a lot for any studio, you know, let alone Remedy, who again doesn't necessarily have the best track record of putting stuff out quickly. Although I guess they have been better in recent years. Obviously, we had Quantum Break in 2015, Control, I think about 3 years later, and then 3 years later, obviously, you know. So they're better at it, but it's still a lot. Like, and these are two high profile games in Alan Wake 2, and in my opinion, Control 2, which I'm like extra hyped for. Like, I'm more excited for Control than Alan Wake personally, because Control was just wonderful. But then to have these two remakes of these very important games, and then these other new IP, it's a lot. So it's a lot for anybody, I think.
Let's see here. Oh, I was looking at my notes. I wanted to bring this up before we move on. I never realized Remedy's logo was a bullet.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I was looking at it yesterday and it finally popped out to me. I was like, it's a bullet. Oh, because of course Max Payne was known for the bullet time.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's move on to number 3. Recently on the show, we've been hammering home a specific point. Skilled labor in the games industry is in massive demand, and workers have perhaps never been in more control than they are right now. This was recently evidenced by PlayStation's acquisition of Bungie, in which a staggering $1 billion of the buyout is going towards employee retention bonuses. In other words, Sony wants Bungie's workforce more than just its name and IP. Well, an even crazier move is happening across the Pacific, and for some reason, few outlets are discussing it. Capcom is giving its entire workforce an average raise of 30%. In a press release, Capcom announced the move alongside a reorganization of some of its internal corporate departments and said the following in part, quote, beginning with the 2022 fiscal year, Capcom will partially revise its compensation system. This will consist of an average base salary increase of 30% and the introduction of a bonus system more closely linked to the company's business performance, unquote. In other words, Capcom is booming and they want everyone in their operation to feel the positive effects. Capcom, the renowned Japanese publisher and developer known for Street Fighter, Monster Hunter, Mega Man, and more, was founded in the late 70s and only a decade ago was in fairly dire straits. However, in recent years, the entity started to turn things around in a massive way, particularly on the back of 2 franchises, Resident Evil and the aforementioned Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter World, which came to PS4 in 2018, is the best-selling Capcom game ever, and every Resident Evil game since 2017's Resident Evil 7 has been a commercial and critical hit, particularly Resident Evil 2 Remake, which launched in 2019 and sold substantially more than the PS1 original, which I thought I was fascinated by that. So there's more news coming out about how Activision is taking all of its QA now and making them full-time with at least $20 an hour pay. So there is a massive move towards, in Japan and in the West, towards retention. And here's the thing. And Chris, I'm curious what you think of this. Money talks. Like, we do well, we pay fairly. But one thing I try to do at the end of every year at our company is to send everyone a bonus, right? And I, as a freelancer, have never gotten a bonus. But I try to send a bonus so large that to people to show them appreciation that it's like staggering. It's like, holy shit, this is a lot of money. And little moves like that, I believe, are not all it takes, but a big part of just treating your workforce with respect. Treat them human, understand that they're not doing this for fun, understand that we're not here doing sacred symbols just because it's something that we get together and do. It has to pay the bills. It has to make sure that we can satiate ourselves and all the rest. And I try to do that. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I simply try to do that because I know what it's like to be underappreciated and underpaid and try to kind of nip that in the bud. And to see major corporations taking that initiative, I find to be very positive. And hopefully Capcom is just the next domino falling in people getting better paid. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could, I don't know how much I can stretch out just saying I think it's positive, you know, like I just hope, I hope this is emblematic of a change that is, you know, going to sweep the industry at some point super soon, because I do think that's a really big deal, especially now where I feel like there's a lot of, I don't know, man, there's a lot of people are feeling generally disenfranchised. You know, especially after this pandemic and just after the crazy economic turmoil that it wrought, you know, people aren't feeling too, I don't know if patriotic's the right word, but like they're not feeling too great about, you know, their jobs. And to see, you know, a rich industry treating their employees correctly, which, you know, better late than never, I guess, is how I should say it. But I think it's I think it's positive.
Dustin, what do you think? I like this. What I like about this is the 2-pronged effect. They're saying, listen, we're not paying our people enough baseline. We're giving you a raise, but we're also going to have a new bonus structure too. And the most expensive part of any major corporation is its workforce. There's no doubt about that. People underestimate how expensive it is to employ people. It's not just your salary, it's everything else that goes into it. The division of your presence at a building that you rent, your cost on healthcare and 401k stuff and deferment and all that. So there's a lot of cost going into it. But it's no doubt that those people are the lifeblood of any enterprise and they should be receiving the benefits. And if I've said this in the past, if I was making gratuitous amounts of money, and wasn't sharing that with the people that helped me make it, I would really have a problem with myself. Nonetheless, have a problem with dealing and living with myself and all of that. And that we see corporations, and I've said this before, I have no problem with a CEO making 5 million, 10 million, whatever a year. It's a hard job. Most people listening to the show, including me, would not be capable of being a CEO of a major corporation. It's a fucking lifestyle. And I wouldn't want to do that necessarily. And it's a difficult job to be the way the buck stops with a major corporation. But that people exist at McDonald's making $7.25 an hour somewhere in like Indiana, and then the corporate heads are making $50 million a year. I find that gratuitous, fucked up, because the source of the revenue comes at the bottom and then rises to the top. And it's not to say the people at the top don't do anything. It's to say that the people at the bottom do a lot. So I think it's quite rational to pay your people more. And I'm glad that the workers are in a position of power right now. I mean, shit, man, a Staten Island-based Amazon warehouse just voted to unionize. It's awesome. Why not? I hate corporations. I'm sick of these fucking companies. I like some of the products they make, but they're not benign entities that don't do anything wrong or anything like that. They fuck them. Get your money.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad to see this. This goes beyond, I mean, like you mentioned, this is Capcom, but a few weeks ago, we also saw Bandai Namco raise the base pay as well. And what's good to see is that I don't know how this works or what the state is on a global perspective, but obviously here in the US, inflation is running rampant. And so I'm guessing that also there's some kind of global effect on that as well. At least
I mean, inflation's worse in the United States than it is in most places, but everyone is experiencing inflation right now.
Right. And what's cool about this is that this is well above and beyond just an inflation markup, so to say. Right. This is 30%. I mean, that's insane. That's bonuses normally, well, not bonuses, but raises often are in the single digit percents. And so to go a full 30% is just crazy, along with bonuses. I mean, that's, like you said, that is how, if you are doing well and you want to retain your talent, I mean, money talks. That's how you do it, is pay well and go above and beyond. And so it's good to see. Hopefully we see that crossover to some US developers as well, but it's good to see at least Japan taking the initiative.
I think it's trivial. Well, I don't want to say it's trivial, but if you gave a $500,000 bonus to like an employee that's been at your studio, like let's say he's a production head or something, he's been there for 10 years and you give him $500,000 as a bonus when a big game came out. It's a lot of money, right? It's a lot of money, but that would probably buy, in quotes, his loyalty forever. He can go put a down payment on a mega house and his family be treated well for the rest of their lives. And it changes the whole baseline of his bill paying and his expectations with finances. And it just puts his mind at ease. And like, what is that worth? And I think companies are trying to figure that out and are starting to figure out that churn only hurts you. No offense, but look at Halo Infinite, right? Which Chris always talks about. It's just like it was made by like a fucking coalition, pardon the pun, of people. It wasn't made by a team, right? It was made by like an NFL team where they're like half the players are always just coming and going.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can make great games like that. I just don't. How could you? How could you make a great game like that? So I think people are trying to nail talent in place. It's not just about financially rewarding them and keeping them happy. It's about nailing them in place. And if you just got a 30% raise at Capcom and you're looking at, oh, well, there's an opening at Platinum, or there's an opening here, there's an opening. Really? Now is there? If you made the equivalent of $100,000 a year and you're making $130,000 a year now, big raise. And so congratulations to them. And guys, keep getting yours out there. If you're a worker, keep getting yours. Work hard. Do what you got to do. Be honest and forthright. Do what you're supposed to do. But make sure you're being compensated properly. And if you're not, consider fighting for it. Now's I don't remember a time in my life where the worker has been more in control than they are right now. As my brother-in-law says, the help wanted signs just get bigger and bigger. They're not going away. All right. Number 4. Since 2020, we've been telling you to keep an eye on Japanese publisher and developer SNK. Why? Because it's slowly being gobbled up by a sinister entity. And this week, we report to you the inevitable bad news. The deal is done. And 96% of SNK is now owned by a Saudi-aligned foundation. As quietly reported in SNK's financials, as relayed by website The Verge, the MISK Foundation, owned and operated by Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, has increased its holding of the company to one of complete control. It was only in 2020 that the Crown Prince owned less than a third of the once popular Japanese entity, and the goal was always to transparently absorb larger and larger portions of the company, which has happened. Mohammed bin Salman, who is second in line to rule Saudi Arabia and who is widely seen as corrupt and responsible for major crimes and acts of terrorism, including the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, has embraced Western culture and companies to help normalize his to-be reign and diversify Saudi Arabia's oil-dependent economy. It was just weeks ago that we reported that Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund, literally the country itself, acquired 5% of both Capcom and Nexon, as it too tries to diversify. SNK, founded in 1978. It could have been if it's like Nintendo. Is best known for its Neo Geo console and arcade games. These days, its fighting games are largely all that's seen from the label, both in the form of King of Fighters and Samurai Showdown. Side-scrolling shooter Metal Slug is also a well-known and still contemporary SNK product. The Snack Squatch wrote in and said, "Hey guys, Colin, you guys talked about the Prince of Saudi Arabia owning SNK quite some time ago. This week I've seen multiple stories reporting on this matter. Why is the mainstream gaming journalists always late to the party on these matters? They can beat the J.K. Rowling drum to death, but somehow let this go under the radar for so long. Thanks for all you guys do." I just want to say,
there's a simple answer to that.
Please,
but
Chris.
Continue.
Please, no.
Well, I was going to SEO.
Oh yeah, SEO, of course.
J.K. Rowling is a far sexier name to have on your headline than Saudi Arabian.
If you're getting paid $20 for a story, we'll talk about that in a little while. Then maybe you're going to go for the SEO win. But
yeah,
I want to say, I said this on Discord. Don't forget who told you about this first. And not only a little bit first, I was talking about this in 2020. And I was talking about this on the show repeatedly. This guy is getting involved in SNK. They're going to gobble SNK up. Keep an eye on SNK. It's going to happen. They're going to be literally owned by the man who killed Jamal Khashoggi, one of the most famous cases of journalistic malpractice ever. Literally, clearly murdering a journalist in broad daylight with like 18 Saudi agents involved in it.
It's insane.
The Saudi people are good people. I have no problem with the Saudis. We have Saudi listeners. The Saudi Arabian government is a tyrannical, theocratic autocracy. In Saudi Arabia, being gay is illegal. Try being a woman in Saudi Arabia and walking around without fucking tapestry over your body. These aren't people that share our values. And it matters. It fucking matters. So when you see an SNK game next time and you're putting your money now directly in the pocket of bin Salman. Great.
Oh, man, that sucks. That sucks so much. That's so bad. I'm glad I already bought the original Metal Slugs and I own them. But like, man, I love Metal Slug so much. It's so depressing.
Yeah, it sucks, dude. Dustin, you have anything to add before we move on?
I just I searched SNK and I did see Kotaku's headline. One of the worst people in the world now owns over 96% of SNK. So at least they're sounding the alarm
talking about it.
Yep.
to some extent. But yeah, I think I'm with Chris right now. It's just like, what do you say other than it sucks? Like,
yeah, like
I think that if more people were paying attention, this could have been avoided. See, this is the thing where I think people could have used their power. And when SNK and the owners in Japan announced that this was the plan, everyone could have been like, I don't think so. You know, this happened didn't this just happen in soccer in the Premier League in England, where like a Saudi entity was trying to buy a Premier League team and they were like, no way, dude. Or some shit like that happened. It's like you have to. We could have stopped this. It could, like, someone else could have been like, oh, I'll buy SNK like for this amount of money. I mean, not to say it's an Elon Musk situation, but look, Elon Musk just bought 9.2% of Twitter. It's like which is fucking hysterical. It's one of the funniest things ever. And you could have had a similar situation, like save SNK. Like, how can we get a different buyer involved? I just feel like, though we can't, again, live moralistic economic lives, we can try to endeavor getting better outcomes. And I don't think people were loud and boisterous enough about this. I feel like this reminds me a little bit about, not to be to put too fine a point on it, but back in 2008 during the financial crisis when like Lehman Brothers and AIG fell, and everyone's like, oh, just let them fall, and then slowly realized it was just going to be this cascading effect, and they put a stop to it. Maybe this is like the AIG, and next time a big foreign, shadowy, backwards, medieval entity like the Saudi government comes in and tries to buy one of the video game titans of the industry. They own Neo Geo. Do you not understand that now? Neo Geo, you know, like one of the most famous arcade platforms. It's just fucked. I don't like it. You know,
No,
I don't know what else to say. It's just fucked up.
it's really all we can say.
True enough.
Sorry, we can stop it.
Nope, too late.
Too late.
All right. Number 5, as reported by website Axios, information that can be confirmed by this very podcast, Sony has laid off nearly 100 staff members from the PlayStation team, particularly in sales and marketing positions that, even with PlayStation's booming popularity, don't particularly fit with the current paradigm of hardware and software sales. As Axios writes in part, quote, the company is shutting down its merchandiser team in the US. Roles in that group include PlayStation representatives, whose job often involves going to retail stores to prime them to sell PlayStation products and ensure staffers were knowledgeable about them, end quote. It actually took a couple of weeks for these layoffs to bubble to the surface. This podcast first learned about them in late March. They were actually publicly reported by several people on Twitter, but journalists didn't take note, and without the ability to confirm, this show doesn't communicate with Sony in any way. We felt it better to stay quiet until it was reported elsewhere. It's funny, like I was all over this when it happened because there were actually developers talking about it, and I was surprised that no one said anything. It was actually a friend of the show, Luke Bernard, who's making the game about the Holocaust. We had him on a few months ago. He was the one that said, like, oh, a bunch of my friends got laid off. And I followed up on that, and I was just looking into it. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Here's all the LinkedIn posts and all this. And I was just waiting for someone to put it together. But since I refused to talk to Sony in any way, I couldn't reach out to them to confirm. And it just felt like it wasn't really that important anyway. It was like, I mean, it sucks for those people that lost their jobs, but it has nothing to do with this show. But nonetheless, best of luck to you guys. Number 6.
100%.
According to yet more reporting from famous gaming industry insider Tom Henderson, Ubisoft's FPS battle royale game Hyperscape may be being replaced by something else entirely. Now, we know that Hyperscape is no more. The game, which is on PS4, is set to be shut off at the end of this month. A weird move for a fairly young game, a sign that it's simply not doing well in a competitive landscape. But Ubisoft may now be directing its new multiplayer game energies into another project, which Henderson notes is called Pathfinder, or at least codenamed that. This game, which apparently looks graphically similar to Hyperscape, is also a battle royale, quote, where a team of 4 players will drop into the map and find their path towards the center to fight the main AI boss. In order to get to the middle of the map, players will need to fight AI enemies to level up and get stronger, with AI getting noticeably more difficult the further towards the middle of the map you get. Presumably, the game will be PvPvE, as you'll be dropping into the map with other players, so the AI will not be your only threat. Players are called heroes, with each having their own unique abilities, although those abilities cannot yet be determined as the game is in early development, end quote. Word of Ubisoft potentially trying something new in multiplayer comes on the back of word that the publisher will cease support of its most recent Ghost Recon game. We're actually going to talk about that shortly, so I'll leave that off. Chris, what do you think? It just seems like more generic. Like, I don't even know. It's just, what would you call something that's generic? Genera, I guess? Like the idea of just ether of shit wherein I don't care. You know? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't care about Battle Royale at all. I think it's a perfectly fine game mode for something that has a larger offering. Like I've always, like, even with like something like Halo, like people were like, it should be a Battle Royale. It's like, well, it should maybe have one in it, but it shouldn't just be.
Right.
And just the idea that, like, okay, here's a new thing. It's a Battle Royale, and it's that I'm already off the train at that point. I'm already like, all right, cool. Well, doesn't interest me at all. But it's like, oh no, wait, hold on. It's got an interesting twist. PvPvE, also something I've heard before several times, and I still don't really. Hunt Showdown.
Yeah.
Which to be fair is apparently very good. Like the people who play that game like insist that it's very, and I believe it. But I just can't. I can't be expected to care every single time one of these damn things just bubbles up to the surface. Like, hey, I'm here too. I do PvPvE as well. It's also a really terrible. I don't know. There's got to be a better way to say that.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, like PvPvE is a really just awful.
it's descriptive, which, fair enough. There's a lot of nomenclature in the gaming industry that is very nondescript. We've talked about that before, like adventure game and stuff like that. But I just this does nothing for me. I don't know why they even. God help Ubisoft, man. Like, I hope you're all right. I hope you're okay over there.
Sorry, guys, I can't believe this. I was just looking at the bottom of my screen, and it says 56 degrees, tornado. On the bottom, like, where it says
Are you
weather?
serious?
Yeah. And then
Where
I
do
click
you
on
live?
this, and it says tornado watch in effect. From
Oh my God.
like, what is? I'm sorry, I couldn't believe it. Anyway, Dustin, do you have anything to add for the Ubisoft Hyperscape possible replacement?
So back when I was working with my old site, Handsome Phantom, we would get PAX emails of saying, hey, come check out our game. I used to joke that it was like Mad Libs of gaming. That was like, come check out our roguelike, Souls-like, Metroidvania RPG with a splash of Portal. Like, that would be the headline of the email. And that's what this kind of reminds me of, is that we've already exhausted the base of Battle Royale. So we just got to start tacking shit onto it. Well, it's Battle Royale. It's PvPvE. And guess what? You like Overwatch, right? Or you liked Overwatch? We got Heroes, baby. Just keep tacking shit on. And eventually they'll like it, right? That's how it works. So, I don't know. I'm tired of these watered down. It's like a game it sounds like, I don't know. I don't want to be too judgmental. Hopefully this game comes out. It's awesome. But when you start to continually add stuff like this, it's like, well, what element do you actually do correctly at this point? Because you're kind of it sounds like you're doing a bit of everything,
Yeah, you're doing so much that you can't possibly be good at any of it.
Right.
It's one of those things where it's also the studio, like specifically Ubisoft, who has for the last however many years just been in a really weird spot with this type of thing. Like, they obviously, what was that weird X-Defiant?
Which they removed the Tom Clancy name from,
one.
so that's just going to be a standalone game now.
They removed the Tom Clancy name from that. Then they announced something, and then 3 days later they took the trailer down. And then here's this other thing. It's a PvPvE. It's like if Bungie was like, hey, we're going to make a Battle Royale PvPvE, that would be disappointing to me, but I would be interested because it's a developer that has a pedigree in some of this stuff. But like, what does this genre coming from Ubisoft really mean for anybody? Like, it doesn't hold any weight.
That's what I was saying. Like, Ubisoft's a tale of two publishers for me, because on one hand they have like some really good shit, in my opinion, and on the other hand they have just this need, this desire. I don't blame them. I mean, Rainbow Six Siege probably lit up fire under their ass, especially like, look at this fucking game. Like, no one. But I think what they didn't realize was that I don't think Rainbow Six Siege was ever made to be what it became. I think sometimes games are morphed by the environment in which they're launched into, and you have to almost kind of embrace that and hope for it. It's the very piece of vital luck that every game is drawn into. And when you have a game that everyone is playing, or you're expecting a lot of people to play to keep it sustaining, then that luck increases, right? And
yeah,
I don't know, man.
Especially a live service game, which like lives and breathes based on its ability to adapt and evolve and change. But the key point in that is you can't really meet people where they already are. You kind of have to make something that stands on its own first, and then maybe it can become something greater in the future. Destiny 2 is a great example of that, where Destiny 2 launched in vanilla state really, really poorly, like really, really bare bones, really, really bland, and now it's a very, very deep RPG with like genuine builds that you can like really sink your teeth into. It's a very different experience than it used to be, and it's partially because it had that opportunity,
right?
But but it feels like a lot of these games try to launch in that end state without doing the work to building a functioning game in the first place. And
well, it's also like, why don't you just take the energy, production value, the creativity behind Skull and Bones, X-Defiant, Hyperscape, et cetera, and just make one game, and just say like, we want your attention. If we want your attention in this space, like we want your attention with Assassin's Creed, we want your attention with The Crew, we want your attention with Just Dance. and we want your attention with The Division, and then we want your attention with this game. This is our Apex Legends. This is our Fortnite. And it's like, don't have 17 of those. And what are you doing? Have one of them.
Just cannibalizing.
Well, I wonder if the strategy comes from they're looking at how Fortnite launched, which was save the world, and then they released the bare bones battle royale mode, and it took off, and so then they were able to invest a lot more money. So I almost wonder if they're just throwing stuff out there, hoping to hook something, and then further invest a lot more.
Yeah, that's fair.
But they're forgetting about. I'm not saying that this is the only reason Fortnite did well off the bat, but one of the major reasons that it was one of the only competent competitors to PUBG that was not available on consoles yet. It was one of the early battle royale games. And so it's like,
it's also free.
And it was free. So like, that's a major element about how that game launched, the environment that led it to, skyrocket to success. And it's like, I don't know if that same strategy will work for these other games.
All right. Well, we'll keep it a close eye on Ubisoft. I almost want to do a deep dive on them on Plus at some point. Like, just see. It's hard to. The problem with them is that, with the exception of like Massive and Red Storm, they own a shit ton of teams that are just all named Ubisoft City, and it's hard to keep a track because of that about like what everyone is even doing. And it would be good to kind of like lay it out and see like what is happening here. What are you guys doing? And we can have a better understanding of that. Fascinating company, I think. And again, I have a lot of love for Ubisoft games. It's just some of them, not all of them. All right. Yeah. By the way, Ubisoft bought, probably through a marketing agency, bought ad space on Sacred Symbols through our ad reps for a podcast or whatever, in which we declined because we don't want Ubisoft's money. Thanks anyway. Number 7. It's been a while since we've discussed Konami's eFootball on this show, but it's time to break our silence. First, some background. As you probably know, Konami once had a long-running soccer series known as Winning 11 and later Pro Evolution Soccer, going all the way back to the mid-90s. While the series did well enough against EA's dominant FIFA franchise, it was still second fiddle each year. And several years ago, Konami decided to abandon the annualized approach to the series, opting to create a free-to-play platform instead. In the process, they abandoned PES for eFootball, but there was a major problem. The game, which launched in early fall of 2021 on PS4 and PS5, was in pretty horrid shape. Indeed, even as a free game, it was one of Metacritic's worst scored games of the year, and Konami admitted it needed to fix things. According to an extensive blog post on Konami's website, that update is coming in mid-March, mid-April, in the form of patch 1.0. The publisher writes in part, quote, "The development team has been hard at work since launch to regain the trust of our esteemed fans, as well as to make the game even more enjoyable for soccer fans around the world. Ellipsis. Although it has been 6 months since the initial release last September, we believe we have finally reached a level of quality that we can be confident of," end quote. The blog post extensively details all incoming changes, which are substantial. eFootball actually has promise, particularly overseas where soccer is biggest. The game charted on PlayStation's free-to-play charts around the world at launch, but fell off in most locales following its poor reception. I don't know if there's much more to say here, so I won't even throw it over to you guys, other than to say that I am watching this with great intrigue. EA is about to turn its own FIFA franchise upside down by renaming it. I don't think it's really going to matter, but we know that following this coming World Cup year to game, that EA is going to rename their game EA Football Club. And now I'm not saying PES is going to go for FIFA's name. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that would even be a good idea. But it gives them a little bit of breathing room. It gives them a little bit of oxygen to say, like, well, there's a little bit of interest here. And if you look at the European PSN charts, eFootball is still on them. So I really feel like if they got this game right, this could be number one on the free-to-play charts. It can be Konami's biggest game, but they just have to get it right. And I don't know what they were thinking coming out with the game in the state it was. Like, just chill. Like, what is the rush? Don't these companies understand? I don't believe in you only get one impression. Like, your first impression is the most important. And that's it. But the first impression is really important. And when you have that first impression, you gotta like follow it up with a better second impression. And I think that that's what they're going to try to do now. But eventually, you just run something into the ground. And I hope that they don't do that with this, because they have actually a nice idea. When you think about it, there are no free-to-play sports games.
Yeah.
There's no free-to-play American football
right.
game. There's no free-to-play baseball game. There's no free-to-play, hockey game of any consequence on console. This is a fucking big deal. I don't think people really understand that. They just... I don't know. Fucking Konami, the worst.
It's
I don't know, just in general, games just releasing when they're clearly not ready. I don't understand what your goal is, because you'd ideally just want that. You're right that your first impression is not all that matters, but it matters a really great
Certainly.
deal, like a large amount. And if you can't nail that in at least a serviceable way, like at the very least, because like Halo Infinite's in a rough state right now, but at the very least, when that game came out, it was fun. And the ball physics worked,
right, like the core shooting worked,
so to speak.
Like, that was
Like,
the
the
thing. It's like
core
the
of
game
it-
didn't work, right?
Yeah, it still shouldn't have been really. I would have delayed that another year
Right.
personally, but at the very least it worked. But like when this game was out, we were when we were reading what was wrong with it, it was the funniest thing ever, because it's like the core basis for why you would even play this game in the first place. It's like, oh, the ball didn't work in your football game. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. It was like an upscaled mobile game. It was, and that's fine if it's going to be a scaled game from the very top to the very bottom, going towards the lowest common denominator. But you need to make it work. And hey, Konami, open your fucking eyes. Your two major competitors in sports, Take-Two and Electronic Arts, are now regularly canceling and vetoing games that were supposed to come out for the last few years and just saying they're not ready. And 2K, when they tried to be cute and get Ukes off of the WWE game, look what happened. They had to cancel the next one and then get a year to like gain people's trust back, and that's going to be a process. And EA just nixed, or Take-Two, by the way, nixed that PGA revival too till next year. That was supposed to come out this year. And then EA has canceled like 4 or 5 basketball games in the last 10 years. You don't just release something because it's ready to go. You have to be careful. I don't know what they don't understand about that. Anyway, number 8. Let's go back to Ubisoft. There's some Ghost Recon related news to share if you're a fan of or interested in Ubisoft's long-running Tom Clancy associated shooter. First things first, Breakpoint, the newest Ghost Recon game launched on PS4 in 2019, will no longer be updated. Word comes by way of the game's social media feeds, which notes that the game received some dozen updates and will no longer be updated after that. However, they are explicit. The servers for both Breakpoint and the previous Ghost Recon game, 2017's Wildlands, also on PS4, will remain on. But the news doesn't end there, because there's a future for Ghost Recon, according to our report on website Kotaku. There, an article suggests that the NVIDIA-leaked project known as OVER, O-V-E-R, is in fact Ghost Recon, that it's in development, presumably at longtime Ghost Recon developer Ubisoft Paris, and it may come to PlayStation 5 as soon as 2023. The original Ghost Recon launched back in 2001 on PC via Ubisoft-owned Team Red Storm, which is the original Tom Clancy studio. It was ported to PlayStation 2 in 2002, and it was followed by a proper sequel, Ghost Recon 2, after a few years of spin-off support on the original game. It came to PS2 in 2005. The last notable pre-Ubisoft Paris Ghost Recon game was PS3's Future Soldier, which launched in 2012, and represented a passing of the baton from Red Storm, which acted as lead developer, to Ubisoft Paris, which acted in support. I don't know that we need to get more into this. It's just more Ubisoft. This news broke right before we started recording, so I wrote it up, but Ghost Recon will return, and Ghost Recon Breakpoint was not well received. I think Wildlands, people like that game. So these games will remain on, and that's nice. No reason to shut them off. So fair enough. Number 9, I'm excited about this one. Wonderful Canadian studio and friends of the show, Drinkbox, have revealed that their newest game, Nobody Saves the World, is finally coming to PlayStation consoles. The game first launched early this year on Xbox and PC, where it was available via Game Pass. The dungeon-crawling action RPG is Drinkbox's 6th game, its first being the PS3 exclusive downloadable game Tales from Space about a blob, which launched in 2011. However, PlayStation fans first fell in love with the team the following year when Tales from Space Mutant Blob's Attack came to Vita when the handheld launched. It was later ported to PS3. Perhaps its most popular game is the side-scrolling brawler Guacamelee, which came to PS3 and Vita in 2013 and PS4 in 2014. Its sequel followed on PS4 in 2018. In between, the team released one-time Vita-exclusive dungeon-crawling RPG Severed in 2016. I love that game. Nobody Saves the World, which is based around a protagonist that can use a bunch of different powers, launches on both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on April 14th, right around the corner. Those guys are buddies of mine. I'm actually in the credits of Nobody Saves the World, which is funny. But they're buddies of mine, friends of the show, love Drinkbox. Super excited for this game to come to PlayStation. Gonna play the shit out of it. Dustin, did you play it on Game Pass?
I played a little bit of it, but I ended up getting distracted. But this is a good opportunity, honestly. Sorry, but I'm thinking this might be a good Switch game. Take on the go.
Yeah, it'll be on Switch as well, I think.
Yeah, so I think I may end up picking it up there. But I do. I also have a Steam Deck that will eventually come at some point. So maybe I should get the PC version. I have no idea when that thing is coming out.
You still waiting on that? You think it's is there like a progress bar on that or what?
No, okay. It's off topic, but
Gabe's gonna come bring it to you.
There's a calculator that you can use that if you like enter in this thing, it'll give you an estimate of when it thinks it will ship your Steam Deck, which is just crazy because I was there day one when it unlocked, and like the moment pre-orders went up, I was like, I'm going for it. And I'm still, according to that calculator, I'm probably still a few weeks away from mine. But
Gabe's gonna come knock on your door, man. It's gonna be exciting,
dude. Please,
yeah.
Gabe, you are welcome. I would cook dinner for Gabe. We could, maybe sit on the porch, drink some wine, maybe
make love.
That's what
a little bit of romance.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's what it is.
That's what it takes.
Every day, he's the only person delivering Steam Decks, and every day he delivers one and spends a grand amount of quality time with each individual customer, and that's why it's taking so long. So you can't complain.
One at a time.
That is quadruple A customer service.
Yeah.
All right, what else here? Oh, hold on a second. Here we go. Number 10. While we wait for PlayStation Now to be folded into PlayStation Plus beginning in June, the streaming and back catalog service nonetheless persists with some new additions for the month of April, all, of course, on PlayStation 4. The biggest game of the bunch is no doubt the exploration game The Outer Wilds from developer Mobius Digital, which first launched in 2019. Also included is the Cloudton-developed racing game WRC10, the 2019 adventure title Journey to the Savage Planet from defunct team Typhoon Studios, RIP Stadia. They, of course, made that game for Stadia. And paper and pencil RPG-inspired action RPG Werewolf, The Apocalypse Earthblood, developed by Cyanide. All of these games should be on Now's service by the time this podcast launches and will be available until unknown periods of time, respectively. A couple of those games are from Nacon, so I'm wondering if they have some sort of deal going with Sony right now. Bart Van Geert wrote in, clearly from the Netherlands, and he says, "Hey, CDC, long-time listener, first-time writing in. I'm a 44-year-old bus driver, and I want to thank you guys for making those hefty work hours a lot more durable with the excellent podcast. Thank you. I was wondering if everyone here realized that in the PlayStation blog about the upcoming PS Plus tiers, current PS Now members are going to be put into the highest tier, namely PS Plus Premium. With this being the case, I recently bought 3 years of PS Now on the website cdkeys.com for 127 euros, thus saving 232 euros, basically getting 3 years for the price of one. Just thought I'd share this because life isn't getting cheaper and we need all the money to romance our chicken before stuffing it. Thank you, Bart, for writing in. Appreciate it."
Whoa.
I saw this. I don't know if you guys saw this. There's a pretty easy workaround. However, I refuse to do it because I really just don't know if I'm going to want it or not. Like, people have been pointing this out. It's like Sony knows that you can do that. They could have shut that down quickly. They don't care that you're doing that.
Yeah, because you're still
Right?
buying. You're still buying into this.
They don't give a shit. You're just boosting their numbers. So for me, I know that trick exists. I don't know if it's going to exist or still be doable by the time this podcast airs. I hope it is, if that's what you're interested in. And I was going to do it. I saw people like being like, I bought 5 years and stuff. I'm like, but what if it sucks? You know, I just,
That's how I feel.
I'm not that hard up where, I mean, it's nice to save money, but I'd rather just wait and see. And then if it's for me, I'll buy it. What do you did you guys do this, Dustin?
No, I saw that. I had people encouraging me to do it, but again, it's kind of a principle thing for me that it's like I don't want to just blindly buy in right now. We don't
Exactly.
like we were saying last week. This is a content service, and we know nothing about the content, really. So wait and see.
Yeah, I'm all about that. Chris, are you getting the easy PS Now subs?
No, I'll wait to see what's on this thing, and hopefully all the backwards compatible titles run better than Chrono Cross.
Yeah, we'll see.
No, it's
It's
the
like
PAL
my
versions,
one-
Chris. Get ready.
The PAL version
It's coming. Just
Can
like
you
the
imagine if they
PS1
just-
Classic.
Yeah, they take all of the PAL versions off the PS1 Classic, and then it's like this is what you paid for. Nice 25 frames a second.
Yeah, it's actually that's going to be
Wonderful.
the list. It's actually just the PS1 Classic games running in PAL mode with 2 or 3 frames less, and whatever the most desirable game on the PS1 Classic won't be there. People will be like,
you
"I'm so glad I
imagine
paid in
how-
advance for this."
I know, right?
Can you imagine that?
It won't be
'cause
that
I
bad.
can.
Uh,
Because I can. That's the problem. It's like, cause like, no way. The PS1 Classic didn't sell like crazy. Like, it's not like everybody in the PlayStation ecosystem just has a PlayStation Classic just sitting on the. They could get away with that, really.
Jim Ryan
They
says,
could just be like,
"Fuck you! You're going to play Mr. Driller and like it. Sit down,
Driller.
eat."
he's gonna hold a PlayStation 1 controller up to the camera like that.
Finally, to wrap up, Website Push Square reports Driving Simulator, Alaskan Truck Simulator comes to PS4 and PS5 at some point over the next couple of months. And action RPG Made in Abyss, Binary Star Falling into Darkness comes to PS4 at some point this fall. Are you looking forward to that, Dustin? You made a face.
I've heard of that anime, that people really enjoy that. I didn't know there was a game coming. So, interesting.
The website also reports that Light Gun game, The House of the Dead, may be PS4 bound in remake form, perhaps in the coming days, according to a leaked listing from PSN. While Dying Light 2 will be getting a new game plus mode in the coming weeks. Website Komatsu reports Taito-themed collection Layer Section and Galactic Attack S Tribute comes to PS4 on April 28th. Old Sega CD game Kids on Sight Hard Hat Edition comes to PS4 on June 14th. And Shmup, Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid Bursts Forth Korogan Breath comes to PS4 at some point this summer. And I put that box art in our corporate Discord, by the way, so everyone can see it. And finally, and Micah pointed out that it is censored on PS4, and I don't know if anyone is noticing that, but the boobs of one of the characters much bigger on the Switch version.
Is that the shump?
The shump, yes, the shump, exactly. And finally, website Video Games Chronicle reports that Sim Game 2 Point Campus has been delayed from its May 17th launch date on PS4 and PS5, and now will come to both consoles on August 9th. There also is another piece of news that just broke while we were recording. It seems that Tactics Ogre might be coming back. Tactics Ogre, of course, is a beloved at the time, it's now Square Enix strategy role-playing game series, and it first came to SNES in 1995. You guys might know the game Let Us Cling Together, which came to PSP in 2010. Awesome game. Well, Tactics Ogre Reborn has been trademarked in Japan, indicating that something's happening. And by the way, that was in the NVIDIA leak as well.
Oh.
So we'll keep an eye out for that. But boys, as we always do, we end every episode of Sacred Symbols with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience over on Patreon. Support us and be on the show, patreon.com/laststandmedia. We appreciate you. Deep Dark Boys wrote in and said, "Hey dudes, new listener here. Going to be around for quite a while, I suspect. So here's to Colin not croaking anytime soon." We'll see.
Hopefully.
We'll see, yeah.
February and March were, as you guys have noted, insane months for game releases. However, I've noticed something kind of strange. The release slate for the rest of the year is looking uncharacteristically barren. Typically, things there are exciting dates, all over the calendar. Delays be damned, but 2022 holds what? Saints Row? I imagine the cancellations of big events like E3 and the ongoing complications of remote work, I can't speak, in the COVID era have contributed to this lack of announcements. But I'm curious, what do you guys make? God almighty. What do you guys believe is in store for us before the end of the year? Could Daddy Kratos be donning the Santa hat? Could the Terminator visit us in the future with Slitterhead in tow? Thanks for both heightening and grounding my love for this industry, gents. Thank you, and sorry for butchering your entire letter. Dustin, let's start with you. The year is getting pretty slow. Lego Star Wars is actually the last big release until maybe the Supermassive game that's coming out in June. I already forgot what it's called. And beyond that, Saints Row. It's not much. I mean, this is kind of exciting because there's not much to play. We can kind of catch up. What do you think about this?
That's exactly what I was thinking, Colin, is that there are stuff or things that I want to go back and play that I'm very amped to. I totally missed the Persona Arena release on PS4, the fighting game.
Yep.
It totally came and went, and I didn't realize that it came out. So I'm excited to go back to that.
Roll back netcode. So they say.
Yeah. So I am excited for that. As far as the rest of the year, there are still some big things. I mean, of course, God of War, as Deep Dark Boys mentioned, will most likely be sometime this year. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that it could get delayed again, but it is strange to see things kind of die down. It makes you wonder, will there be a lot of dates given over the next few months? Now, E3 is kind of dissolved, but we'll still have that summer release season. So I'm thinking that a lot of the question marks we have right now will hopefully be solved in the coming months, and we can know what to expect for the holiday season. But overall, I'm okay. I don't know. I just feel full right now from
Definitely
Elden Ring and Ghostwire. I feel like I've played some fantastic games, and so I'm just kind of relaxing, seeing a little bit of this, a little bit of Persona fighting, a little bit of Kirby, and we don't have to feel the immense pressure of new games every single week.
I totally agree. I'm looking at the release schedule now, and the only games that are coming that we really would even be on this podcast be remotely interested in that have dates is Nobody Saves the World, April 14th. And then the Stanley Parable comes to PS4 and PS5 finally on April 27th. So that's pretty big. Trek to Yomi is May 5th. Salt and Sacrifice, which is going to be big on both PS4 and PS5, is May 10th. And then that Vampires the Masquerade Swan Song is coming to PS4 and PS5. That's May 19th. Sniper Elite 5, May 26th. Spellforce 3 Reforced is June 7th. Capcom Fighting Collection, June 24th. DNF Duel, June 28th. Same date that Disgaea 6 comes to PS4 and PS5. And then Saints Row in August. Soul Hackers 2 in August. Legend of Heroes Trails from Zero in September. Forspoken in October. Gotham Knights in October. And that's it. Everything else doesn't have a date. So we wait and we see. Yeah. What do you think, Chris?
I don't know. Like I'm kind of with Dustin, where it's just like I'm just looking forward to getting back into my backlog. You know, like I still have Prey waiting for me, and I've been itching. I've been itching to get back to Prey because I feel like there's something really, really incredible there. But for the most part, yeah. On as far as the Sony front, yeah, I don't know.
It's got to be God of War.
Doesn't seem to be
fall,
much.
I just
there. Yeah, you have to assume that like that has to be in the plans. But outside of that, I'm just looking at. I don't know, man. It makes me so sad to see Metal Slug Tactics on the list of things that were going to come out this year that I was like genuinely excited about.
You can still be excited about it and play it. You know, you got to do what you got to do. It's
I'll
hard.
find a way. I'll find a way.
Fair enough.
There are avenues, but I think you know, I don't know. I'm going to use this time wisely because there's just a lot out of nowhere. These kinds of months can happen where like the last this February and March can happen out of nowhere because so many things get delayed or pushed. Like, oh yeah, February, why not? And then you have a February that's just chock full of great shit, or just like one random month that's just an insanely difficult month to get through just because of how much is available. So in preparation for the next month like that, I'm going to be taking it easy. I'm going to be playing some games that I was playing before that I didn't get to finish, playing some games that I missed out on, and just try and build up a more complete list of completed titles. Because I find that I don't know, my backlog's full of stuff that I start and never finish because I just get like, I don't know, I get bored or I get distracted, and I'm just I want to finish things more.
Yeah, I totally understand that. The reality is that most people don't finish their games. I mean, trophies and achievements totally revealed that to everyone. I'm looking at my list, and I want to get back to my trophy list. I want to get back to Infernax. That game was awesome. Maybe give Deathloop another try. Just cause Tales of Arise, I did miss and didn't really play. Biomutant, I would like to get back to at some point. So there are games. I'm dude. If they didn't release any games the rest of the year, I'd be amped because there is just so much to play. But I also think that Sony's been uncharacteristically quiet, even for them. And I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they announced 1 or 2 games that come out this year on PS4 and or PS5, including Factions, which I've been hearing rumblings about behind the scenes, although I don't know the true veracity of them. But I just that there is some inkling that maybe Factions will be attached to the Last of Us remake. Which would like, in other words, they're remaking the original Last of Us. You can't really remake you could remake Factions, but why not have just totally new robust Factions? But I think it should just be a standalone. Who the hell knows what's going to happen there? Thank you for writing in, Deep Dark.
I mean, they could do both also. Sure. Like what they did with Ghost of Tsushima, where they put it out as DLC, but then they also released the standalone SKU.
I agree. We'll see. I'm very excited about that. Hurry up, Naughty Dog. James Hill wrote in, said, howdy, CDC. Been freeloading since day one, but as soon as I saw Colin somehow got Hasan Karaman on camera, I knew I had to start tithing to Last Stand. Thank you. I am now a loyal member of your flock, Shepard Moriarty. My question is pay or lack of pay to freelance journalists in the gaming industry. On April 4th, IGN senior editor Kat Bailey said the following in a tweet. Quote, IGN is looking for new freelancers to assist with the daily flow of stories in games, entertainment, tech, and science. $20 base rate per story, sliding scale for heavier reporting, DM with an introduction and portfolio for details, end quote. Bailey further elaborated on what a sliding scale meant. Quote, $20 for basic news aggregation, $50 for slightly more involved stories like finding us a fun community angle that's not sourced from another outlet, social media reacts, etc. $300 and up for in-depth multi-source reporting, end quote. IGN is the world's biggest game website, and they're paying freelancers piss poor for their work. You can turn and burn news aggregate stories, but there is only so much news in a day. Depending on what you can Depending on when you can get interviews, multi-source stories take at least a full day. Is this a major reason why gaming journalism is in its current state? Shit coverage for shit pay? Are people with real journalistic chops being scared off by bad pay and a toxic holier-than-thou culture? Why would you work with an IGN when you can be paid more doing PR for a publisher or try your luck with the YouTube algorithm? Thank you, James, for writing in. This was a big industry controversy this week about how little IGN pays for its news reporting. IGN didn't always pay that little. I don't know when that happened. But before I even get into it, I'm curious what you guys made of this. Dustin, you come from the freelance world. What did you make of this, the hullabaloo here?
I think in some ways, my gut tells me when we're specifically talking about the news aggregation, I'd have to talk to someone who does this, but I have known people that did news stories for IGN. And when we're talking about, they said $20 for a basic news aggregation. The way that I would see it working is that you would get a press release, and then basically you would spend somewhere between probably 10 to 30 minutes basically rewriting what the press release says, and then putting some of the press shots in. And that's really it. So theoretically, if you're a quick writer, and if it is basic news aggregation, you could probably do 3 of these in an hour and make $60 an hour. Is it for, like, you know, we're talking about the mainstream gaming journalism in its current state that's just rehashing press releases? You know, maybe that's not so good, but my gut tells me that's not so bad for truly what they're asking for. The bigger question is when you get into the $300 and up for more in-depth multi-source reporting. And that's where it more comes into question. It's like, okay, well, how in-depth are we talking here? Full interviews, stuff like that. But I don't know. To be honest, I never did freelancing reporting, so I can't speak to this too much, but I don't know. Do you think I'm off base, Colin, saying that it's particularly for the news aggregation that's really doesn't seem to be that bad?
It's not terrible. I mean, writing a news aggregate story, literally just saying like this game was announced, is so fucking easy. I used to write like 10 of those a day at IGN. It's not like in between other things that I was doing. It's not a big deal. And so I could see a situation where a really enterprising freelancer's like, I'll fucking make $100 a day, $200 a day doing this. And that to me, I'm like, that's fine, especially because it's really not that intensive. I think people think, well, I don't think people think writing is harder than it is. Writing is just harder for people than it is for a lot of people than it is for me. And so maybe I'm able to do it a little more quickly. What I'm more concerned about is that IGN was promoting this as if it was like good pay. And what really comes to mind for me is just that I personally believe if your goal is to end up working at a website like IGN, you have weird goals in 2022. Like I think that when I became a freelancer at IGN in 2002, I was paid $200 for strategy guides, which is nothing. But that pay ended up going up to $500 a month. And then I started doing other things and started doing like database work for $500 a month. And then I started doing TV show reviews for $50 each and all this like random shit. And I used to make thousands of dollars a month in college at IGN because like if you just kind of put it together, you can make it happen. I think that these kinds of opportunities exist for the hungry. The question is like, what are you hungry for? Because IGN has no future outside of what it is right now. And most of these websites have no future outside of what they are right now. And I agree with James that you're kind of better off just going and doing it on your own. And you might not succeed or probably won't succeed, but you're also not going to be insulted with $20 for a story. Chris, what do you think about this pay scale?
Yeah, I mean, I have no familiarity with what the pay scale is like in journalism or in media or in any one of these websites. I wrote a little bit for like a friend of mine's site. He tried to start something up. This was like 2013, 2014, and it was whatever. Like, but we were just doing it for fun, you know. Like, it was not like I was just like, yeah, I'll help this guy out. He's a good guy. So I didn't have any real experience with the pay of it, but I saw that and it seemed insultingly low. But I also wasn't sure if it was like I was like almost looking around to see if like is that just how it is and everybody's perception is just warped, because I'm sure there is a perception for whatever reason that if you're writing for a video game website, you're just loaded. Because I've seen that perception in like comments or whatever. It's like, oh, this IGN, this guy writes for IGN, and you know, he must have a mansion in the hills, and it's like,
He probably lives with 7 people in the worst part of San Francisco.
yeah, maybe cool. It's San Francisco, so but yeah, I thought it was an insultingly low price. But then I immediately forgot.
Yeah,
about it.
Well, I understand. I mean, to me, it's like I wouldn't do anything for $20 now. But Newsweek a few years ago, I think I said this on the show. Newsweek a few years ago wrote to me, like the magazine, and was like, "Do you want to write a guest op-ed about something?" And they're like, "We're not looking to pay," or something like that. And I was like, I wrote them back, and I'm like, I don't do anything for free. And then they ended up going to someone else in the industry, and that person ended up writing this free thing. I'm like, I'm not fucking doing free labor for you. What is this? Are you crazy? I'm 37 years old. I will say this, that the lowest amount of money that someone gets paid to appear on a podcast at IGN, or I'm sorry, at Last Stand, our company, is $100. That's the minimum amount we pay for a podcast appearance. And that's for like a guest. They're a little different than $20 an article. And we are not a corporation owned by a parent company with a market cap of over $1 billion. It's me. I own the company and I run it out of my house. So maybe just start treating your people a little bit better. I literally tell people, come and talk to me for an hour. I'll pay $100. Right? Like, that's just free money. And you put it in your PayPal account and you go buy someone with it. Who cares? All right. Number 3. Zach Wishnuff wrote in and said, hello, CDC. Are there politically focused games like BioShock that you recommend? I thoroughly enjoyed the series and want to explore games that have similar themes. In my experience, it's nothing like BioShock. It's just a unique series, but there are other political games. Spec Ops: The Line, we always talk about, comes to mind for me. Also, what is that game with the Stalin people?
Disco Elysium.
Disco Elysium.
That's supposed to be like a very deeply political game that I'm hearing very good things about. Maybe one day I'll play it. Chris, does anything come to you? We're both BioShock fans through and through. Does anything come to you that kind of touches the politics of that series?
No, man. That BioShock is a league of its own as far as I'm concerned when it comes to that specific aspect of it. It's even Spec Ops: The Line, for as political as it was, it's not quite in the same way that BioShock is. It's very different. But I would say the only ones that come to mind are the ones that you mentioned. Like Disco Elysium is obviously, Disco Elysium came to mind first because it's like very explicit. But I mean, there's political angles in a lot of games that maybe you wouldn't expect. I mean, there's some politics in the realm of like Fallout.
Sure.
In the Fallout universe and stuff like that. Like there's definitely like games that sort of touch on it, but you're not going to find anything. If you're looking for something like BioShock, you're not going to find it. I
agree with you there. I'm looking at my games, my trophies, and I'm like, I don't know, anything is remotely like that. Do you have anything comes to mind for you, Dustin?
Well, I think there's something to be said about political games or philosophical games, because I think you could equally call BioShock a philosophical game as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's easier to say to recommend games that if you want to just say have deeper meanings in some ways, or have like overall higher objectives. I don't know what I'm exactly trying to say. I'm thinking of like, I don't know. I don't know if this is a good comparison, but if I think of a game that gave me the same types of further thinking outside the game, I think of Nier. Like that's a very philosophical series, but it's not necessarily political. Just because I looked up specifically while you guys were talking, like, what does it mean to exactly be political? Because is Wolfenstein a political game because you're taking on the government of, I guess, the world at that point?
I think it works in. I think it's like a sliding scale. I think if you have a game like Wolfenstein, it's definitely inherently political in some way.
Sure.
You know, like you can't be fighting the Nazis and have it be 100%.
Go to Venus to fight Hitler.
The message there, the message that's being broadcast politically or apolitically, like, is kill the Nazis, which is a political message, just not a particularly thorough one or a particularly robust one. But yeah, I know what you mean, because there are games that make me think a lot, but not necessarily in like a a political way.
Sure.
You know, like Shadow of the Colossus is one of those where it's like that's a really evocative
Oh yeah, dude.
title and a very there's a like that ending. The ending of Shadow of the Colossus is like a really impactful ending. It's got nothing to do with politics like at all, but it's very, very philosophical. I think like the only thing that's coming to mind right now is genuinely something like an RPG, something like Mass Effect. Like there's definitely like political intrigue in that series. There's definitely I mean Metro has flashes of that just based on the inherent setting. But yeah, man, BioShock is a league of its own. Like I really cannot think of another game quite like it as far as the way that it melds political themes into gameplay and philosophy and all that stuff. It's incredible.
Yeah, I agree. And well, like I said, I mean, you can think of Civilization or The Division, and games that I like that have politics in them. But yeah, messaging like that is really
Metal Gear Solid,
right? Metal Gear, yeah,
that's a good one to
another
bring
great
up.
example,
Yeah.
of course. But nothing deals with it like BioShock. It's really one of the reasons why we're so excited for it to hopefully come back.
Shout out to Ken.
Hell yeah.
Oh, there's also that Saints Row game where you're the president.
Oh yeah, that's Saints Row 3, right?
You could, that's technically pretty political. You could, what is it? You could choose to end world hunger or cure cancer or whatever, but you can only choose one of them. And it's Keith David as himself holding it up to you. God,
Good stuff.
Ridiculous.
Dakota Brown writes in, says, "Hello CDC. I have a simple question for you guys. Do you all feel that video games are the best form of escapism? I lost my brother recently, and nothing seems to help distract me unless I was playing a game. Drinking or smoking weed got me in my feelings. Same with being around friends and family. Only playing Elden Ring and exploring the world helped distract me. I'm doing better overall now, but the game got me through my hardest days. Just curious if you all had a similar experience with games. I appreciate you all, and that recent Sacred Symbols Plus episode with Hasan is top tier content. Thank you, Dakota. Sorry to hear about your brother." Yeah, I do think video games are the ultimate form of escapism. The problem is that I still need to be in a certain frame of mind to be able to escape. There are times where nothing is going to let me escape from what's going on in my life. I think I last went through that after I left LA and was just going through a lot of personal things where I was just out of commission, just totally out of commission. And there was no video games. There was nothing but me laying in bed watching TV or something. And I would have loved to have escaped at that time, but I know that I wouldn't have been focused. But when I can get my mind in it, which is usually, then yeah, there is no escapism quite like video games. What do you think, Dustin?
Yeah, it's difficult for me just because with video games, there's an extra level of attention that you have to give to it. And so in some instances, I feel like that would be better than music or watching a movie or reading a book. Well, I guess maybe reading a book could be on the same level because it requires an extra level of attention. But I guess it depends on how difficult or what you're trying to escape is, because I know that there's been times where I wanted to play video games to try to relax, but I can't because there's that thing and it doesn't go away. And it's like, well, I can't even play a game right now, right? But I think that would be on a case by case basis. You know, I don't know. For me, it's never been an escape as just one thing. And sometimes, listen, for me, like if you're feeling down or sad, then maybe listening to that sad song and just embracing it is the way to escape it, is to just feel what you need to feel and have something even emphasize that for a few moments in order to move on. That's another way of looking at it. But obviously, I mean, for some people, video games are like the go-to, and it's awesome that they have that for them.
I agree. Chris, what do you think?
I don't know. I think it depends. Obviously, everything depends on the quality of like what it is you're playing. Like you like if you're playing like a really terrible game, that's not going to help you escape at all. You're just going to be like, all right, this is terrible, and I feel terrible, so it's extra bad. So it's like, but like when you come like Elden Ring was like a really captivating game for me. Like I just got sucked away into that game, and I feel like every now and then there are games like that it's very easy for me to get lost in. It's very hard for me to get pulled out, and those are really good titles to escape in, and those are really easy titles to use for escape. But in my experience, it's almost like when something really bad is happening or I'm going through a lot, it's harder for me to get into a game because of that extra attention that's necessary, because I am the person who has to move things forward. So I find actually like television is very effective for me, because television is going to keep going whether or not I'm ready or not, you know, so it kind of drags you along with it. But simultaneously, it's a lot easier for me to get snapped out of a TV show that I'm engaged in than it is for a video game that I'm engaged in. If I'm playing a video game that I'm really engaged in, I'm in there and it's really hard for me to get out. But it's harder for me to get in when I'm going through something. So I don't know. I think it's a mixed bag. There's definitely some of those special games. Like I think, Halo 2 got me through some pretty wild shit. And Shadow of the Colossus was another one. But those are very rare in my experience.
My mind is just too busy, unfortunately, to fucking OCD or whatever, ADD addled. Who the hell knows what's wrong with me? That depression addled. That I just, what'd you say? Oh,
it has just some D.
Ooh. Oh. Anyway, Dakota. Oh, Dakota, thank you for writing in. Greg Wallace wrote in, said slit heads. There's a debate in the fighting game community over whether these games should go free to play. Some argue that the free to play model would attract new players, while others counter that we've already seen predatory practice in paid fighting games. Street Fighter V launching with almost no content, frame data locked behind a paywall on Tekken, etc. So imagine how much worse it could get with a free to play model. First, I'd like to ask your thoughts on the free-to-play model, and if you think this is the best way multiplayer games can garner a bigger audience. Secondly, since the three of you have each expressed a fascination with fighting games, would a well-made free-to-play game entice you to give it a shot? So I don't want to worry about the free-to-play aspect as far as other games. I want to talk about the fighting games as a free-to-play model. And Greg writing in, actually, I think this is an interesting point. I don't know why I've never really thought about it. I think this could really go one of two ways. First of all, it's not going to get me any more or less involved. I don't give a fuck about free-to-play games or paid games. If I want to play a game, I'll buy it. It's not a big deal. That's not that's not prohibitive for me. And I don't think prohibitive for a lot of people. I think people are maybe more open to trying things if they're free, but that doesn't matter to me. It never has. But I feel like it could get people attracted, but I feel like it could be so nickel and dimed that a game that's requiring such amazing balance could be compromised inherently by having a free-to-play model. I don't know how it would work. Dustin, what's your take on the possibilities of a fighting game going to free-to-play?
I don't know if anyone has done it successfully. I think Killer Instinct was free-to-play, and that was an Xbox joint, but I don't know.
Yeah. I
know that people really like that game, but I don't know how successful it was. The thing that I've been shown over and over in this industry is that free-to-play models don't necessarily have to be bad. In fact, some of them can be very good and very successful. Obviously Fortnite is a big free-to-play game that people feel, while that the extra stuff can be expensive, they don't feel like they have to buy stuff in order to enjoy the game. And often when they do, they feel that it does enhance their experience. So it can be done. Think also Genshin Impact is huge, a huge free-to-play game that has a huge community that seems to pull that off well. I don't know enough about fighting games to figure out where the paid mechanics. I'm not saying like from on a character level mechanic, but from a wider game, like what do you introduce to be paid? Is it certain characters are paid, certain features, skins, stuff like that? I don't know what the answer is, but I think that it could work, just because over and over we see free-to-play games make the model work as long as you get the right elements. Don't let your consumer feel ripped off or that they absolutely have to buy something in order to enjoy the game. That seems to be the core of these free-to-play games that just so many companies don't seem to understand.
What do you think, Chris?
I think that was really well said. And also, I just think you mentioned Killer Instinct, and I'm glad you did, because I thought Killer Instinct was awesome. Like when that game came out on Xbox One, and they had that really weird model where you could buy the whole game, or you could just pay for whatever characters you wanted to use. So basically, like the game was like, this is not exactly the pricing model, but if the game was like $30, but you know you're only going to use this guy, you just pay $2 or whatever, and then you can play the game fully with that character that you. And I thought that was really interesting, an interesting way to do that, because yeah, for the most part, when I play fighting games, I have like maybe 2 characters that I use in that entire roster, and then other people have other ones, and it's like, cool, it's fine. Everybody finds their own character that they want to use, and I think you could use training for free, so you could like try them out and figure out like which one you'd want to use. But I bought that whole game just because that's how even as interesting as a pricing model as it was, I was still like, that was early on in this whole generation where I was just like, I can't compute this exactly, so I'm just going to buy the thing and not worry about it. But as I played it, I thought, this is a really interesting idea, and it's an interesting kind of model. It's not exactly free to play, obviously, but the idea of kind of cordoning off sections of the game to kind of tailor the expense to the amount by which the player is going to engage with it, I think that's interesting. And I don't know how well it did for them, but I thought it was dope. I thought it was really cool, and I thought it was just interesting. So
cool. Good thoughts. Greg, thank you for writing in. I like the idea of a free-to-play fighting game if it can be done right. I think it can go off a cliff pretty quick.
That's true.
Brian Watkins wrote in and said, hey, gents, I've been avoiding From Software like the bubonic plague over the years. Due to its success, I picked up Elden Ring on the PS5, and to my surprise, I ended up loving it. I even have the platinum after 80 hours. I'm now halfway through Dark Souls Remaster, and it's amazing. I've never been so wrong about these games. My question is this. Are there a series of games or one game in particular that you didn't think you'd like but ended up loving? Keep up the good work, boys. Love the show. You know what comes to mind for me with this? More recently, I mean, Outriders was probably the game that I was really smitten with that surprised people. But a similar game was The Division. When that game came out in 2016, I fucking loved it. And I went into it not really anticipating anything. I never really played a game as a service up to that point. I tried Destiny a little bit, Destiny Vanilla at that point, but I never really tried to play a game that was really made for multiple people playing it by yourself. And I didn't really believe that they cared or would do it, and they did it, and it worked. And I really ended up loving that game. I had because it didn't go from like a game I didn't care about to a game that I played. It went from a game I didn't care about to a game that I really hold in high esteem. I really like The Division. I'm looking forward to Heartland, the Red Storm free-to-play, which might be coming out imminently. However, he brought up Elden Ring, and I wanted to bring this up to you guys. This is amazing. I was looking at this last night. I couldn't fucking believe this. I'm going to tell you guys about 3 different games that I've played recently, and platinumed one of them. I'm going to platinum another, and I've not platinumed the third. So the games in question are Far Cry 6, Elden Ring, and Ghostwire Tokyo. Okay? Ghostwire Tokyo's platinum rate is 2.9%. Okay, 2.9%. Far Cry's is 2.7%. 2.7%. Elden Ring's 6.3%. What? Mm-hmm. When I saw it, so you are 3 times more likely to have the Elden Ring platinum than the Far Cry platinum, which is not hard. It's just time consuming. I couldn't believe that. And what it told me was that this game has got its hooks into people in a real way. I mean, most people don't care about trophies, and people that do care about trophies might go after them, but a 6%, almost 7% rate is absurd. Dustin, I'm curious, first, what you make of that, and what you make of Brian kind of finding his way to From, and if there's a game that kind of you followed the same trail with that Brian did with the Elden Ring.
Yeah, well, I think that people with From games, I mean, some people just want the bragging rights, even though it really isn't much of a bragging right to have the platinum in a From game. But I think that particularly with Elden Ring, they did a really good job with the trophies that make people want to go out and get it, because it's a path to experiencing more of the game to get the trophy. It's just a really good set and list. So I think that's definitely part of it. I gotta point out here, listen, people know I read the comments. Some people acting like my 65-hour platinum run is sus or something, that I either cheated or I cheesed something. Brian here is not a Souls player and did it in 80. So it's really not that unbelievable.
Meanwhile, it would have taken me, I probably can't do it. I mean, I'm done with the Elden Ring. I think I'll go back to it maybe one day, which is what happened with Bloodborne, by the way. But for me, I'm off it. But is there any game that's so did you say your example?
No, not yet.
Yeah, so go on. Go on, please. Please do.
Yeah. So for me, it's funny. My examples, it's not a situation that happens very often to me, just because I find that I do a lot of research about games that I'm curious about, and I'm able to determine pretty quickly if it's something I'm going to be interested in and like or not. So I very rarely just go out on a limb and buy something that's a wild card. Particularly though, recently that was Ghostwire Tokyo, because I didn't like Tango's last two games and I was a little skeptical about the combat, and then I ended up really enjoying it. So I know we already talked about it early in the show, but that's the most recent example. And then it's actually kind of my Brian's story kind of not exactly applies to me, but is the same in that I kept trying From Software games and ended up not really liking them or not really understanding them. Particularly, I tried Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2. I bought and tried all of those games and I didn't get it. And it wasn't until Bloodborne that it clicked in my brain. Then eventually, of course, I went back and played all those games. So overall, though, I find more that there are games that I expect to like and I'm excited about, and then don't end up liking really much at all. Monster Hunter World is one of those games that I really thought I was going to be all about, and then it just never clicked for me at all.
Interesting. Chris, how do you answer this question?
Yeah, I mean, I famously on the show Death Stranding.
Oh yeah,
that was one that
example.
like I just, it was so dumb looking, and I just didn't understand. I couldn't understand the premise, and then like it sunk its teeth into me like immediately when I started playing it. And that was probably the most wrong I've ever been. And there's a couple other things, like Gears Tactics was a game that I played that like I had not really been into tactics games because so many of them were like anime, or in the case of XCOM, they just looked very generic. And so like, oh, I know what Gears of War is, you know? So it's kind of like this ease into this genre in the same way that kind of like The Witcher show was for me when I tried to get into The Witcher. Cause I tried The Witcher 3 feels like a million times, and it never stuck with me until I finished the first season of the show. And I was like, all right, I'm kind of familiar with this universe. I feel like I have an easier way of getting into it. And that's definitely the furthest I got into The Witcher 3 after I saw that first season. I think I put like 30 hours into it. And I'm sure there's a couple of things like that I'm forgetting. But to Brian's point about Elden Ring, it's like, I think this is the first From Software game that's really clicked with me. And like I think Sekiro came really close. I think the gameplay clicked with me, but the actual design of Sekiro didn't click with me, and Bloodborne didn't click with me, and the original Dark Souls didn't click with me, to the point where like this one has, to a degree that I can see myself going back to these games that I've previously hated and probably really enjoying them. Like, because I couldn't stand Dark Souls 1 when I played it. I actively loathed it. Like, having my sword hit the wall, but like the enemy can just swing through it. I was like, you got to be kidding me with this. This is fucked. I hate this. I put it down after like 2 hours, I think. I was like, I'm done. And now, having played, Jesus Christ, I almost don't even want to look. Yeah, about 80 hours of Elden Ring. I could probably go back to those games and knock them out now, because I get it. Like, I understand what they're going for. I understand the design philosophy. I understand the drive to finish. But yeah, I think it's an interesting story that everybody's having with Elden Ring.
I do.
It's like really
it's
hooking.
interesting. I'm fascinated by that too. Thank you for writing in, guys. That's all we have for this episode of Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, under 4 hours. It's unbelievable. Chris, you have any closing comments?
No, I'm just glad you didn't get whisked away by a tornado.
I know.
Again.
God, that was so weird. It literally, you know how they have that weather module on the bottom of Windows 10 or whatever, and it says like, it literally said like 65 degrees tornado. I'm like, okay. Dustin, closing comments.
I have a question for Chris, because I saw this on Twitter and I need a brief follow-up. I know we're at the end of the show, but you saw Morbius, and I have to ask just why. And is it bad enough that it's worth seeing?
No, it's not bad enough that it's worth seeing. It's not so bad that it's hilarious. It's not like Final Fantasy.
Stranger in Paradise.
Yeah, SOP, which is an awful abbreviation. But yeah, it's no. Don't see Morbius. It's not good.
Like I got like a cousin of mine was like, "You want to see more? I got tickets," and I was like, "Yeah, I guess it's free. Fuck it, why not? I got time to kill." It was like the middle of the day. It was like 2. It was terrible. It was just as terrible as I thought it would be, having no expectations and understand that it was going to be bad, and it was somehow just like it's a vampire movie with no blood. There's barely any blood in it. It's ridiculous.
It's been fun watching the reaction to it. I'm not going to see it, but
The memes.
Yeah,
Good.
the memes. I like Jared Leto, so stick with 30 seconds.
He has a cult.
Stick with 30 Seconds to Mars.
He has a cult?
Does he
By
really?
the way. Yeah, you didn't know about that?
No.
He like it's like an open, like there's reporting on it. He has an island full of
That sounds
servants.
familiar.
It's very
He's an interesting guy.
It's very bizarre that like he's just getting movie roles. Like, you'd think after, I don't know, certain news things that you'd be careful around people with explicit and public cults, but
Maybe we should start a
You know,
cult.
what do I-
With that news, it doesn't seem like it'd be that hard. I mean, we maybe kind of already
The
have
Gamer
one.
Battalion?
Yeah, Gamer Battalion is the cult.
Oh, yeah.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
Well, boys, thank you for your time today, and thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Sacred Symbols and Last Stand. Remember to support us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. By the way, you guys came out in droves. Thank you so much for leaving us nice reviews on podcast services. We have like a shit ton of new ones on iTunes, and thank you for that. Appreciate
Keep
your
it
candor. Yeah, keep doing that. It helps us algorithmically. But we'll be back next time for episode 198. Until then, that's it. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
See ya.
That wasn't
Take
a
care,
fart.
guys.
That was my foot. Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.